In the darkness of the night, Inés called out desperately, her voice cutting through the silence. Please, wait just a moment. Lord Cárcel, I beg your pardon, but would you be able to lend us a hand? She stepped forward, her expression a mixture of urgency and relief. The Countess just started complaining of extreme vertigo. I just don't know what to do. It's only us feeble women in this place. She paused, steadying herself before continuing. I imagine what she's experiencing is just simple dizziness. It's happened before. She should be fine if she just rests in a quiet place for a bit, but her residence is all the way on the outskirts of Mendoza. But even as the words left her lips, Inés found herself momentarily struck silent. Her thoughts betrayed her composure. Wow, it's really him, the son of the greatest noble family in Ortega. And he's the most handsome man in Mendoza. Lord Cárcel's voice broke through her daze. My lady? Inés snapped back to reality. Oh, my apologies. As I was saying, we've been waiting for a gentleman to pass by so we could ask for help. But as long as we've been waiting here, not a single soul has walked by. That's why we were so relieved that you appeared when you did, Lord Cárcel. Cárcel studied the situation with calm, measured eyes. Yes, this looks like an urgent matter indeed, but Inés was not done. She leaned into the moment, her words flowing with careful admiration. I feel so honored knowing that a gentleman like yourself is out here protecting the waters of the Empire. I heard that your grandfather dedicated his whole life to serving Ortega, and that you decided to follow in his footsteps. People say you wanted to carry on your family's honorable tradition. She let out a soft, almost theatrical sigh. Even so, I was very shocked to hear the news at first. After all, you're the heir to the Escalante family. And the Nunira Sea is still a dangerous place where battles occur quite frequently. Your grandfather Admiral Calderon's great victory was enough to bring us a brief moment of peace, but the pirates still cause so much trouble every year. Cárcel listened patiently, then spoke with quiet conviction. As a member of the Grants de Ortega, I've learned that my power comes with great responsibility. My grandfather always told me that to hold a position of the greatest honor, one must be ready to accept the greatest responsibility. The Grants de Ortega. The label referred to the 17 great noble families that had been bestowed with titles of peerage by the Ortega imperial family. But even among them, the Escalante family was considered the cream of the crop. And as the heir to this powerful family, with his incredibly good looks that were coveted by all, it was as if he had truly been blessed by God. By the age of 15, he was already spending time with every lady who had come of age. By 17, he was being followed by admirers everywhere he went. At 20, he began familiarizing himself with more mature women of little consequence. He had always been wildly insatiable, even in his youth. Now, at the age of 23, Cárcel Escalante de Esposa was in his prime. Yet even as he stood there, composed and certain in his purpose, a quiet and almost reluctant thought crept through his mind. I didn't enlist to do this, but now that I think about it, why did I enlist at all? Inés pressed on, her voice dropping into something softer, almost conspiratorial. That woman is too ordinary. Your fiancé, I mean, she isn't good enough for you, Lord Cárcel. She glanced away briefly before continuing. Of course, she does come from the best family. After all, she belongs to House Valeztena. But she always has that bored, uninterested look on her face. How can she behave that way when she has such a perfect fiancé like you? It's too much, really. I mean, it isn't like she's a nun. And it was there in that moment, beneath the weight of those careless words spoken in the dark of night. After 17 years of being engaged, that Inés Valeztena de Perez first learned of his infidelity. Inés stood there, her thoughts swirling with quiet judgment as she observed him. Just look at those clothes she wears. Your fiancé dresses like a nun. And you wouldn't believe how arrogantly she behaves in front of the other noble ladies. If you only knew, Lord Cárcel. Later, inside the carriage, Cárcel sat in silence, the weight of realization settling over him. So, she heard everything. The residence of Duke Valeztena carried with it an old and stern philosophy. One that had been passed down like an unspoken law. Once married, a man must take no other woman than his wife. Cárcel turned the words over in his mind with barely concealed indifference. I've already taken plenty of women, so what does it matter? Such an antiquated idea for a noble society where adultery is already widely accepted. Yet the old vow pressed on, unyielding. Adultery is forbidden even in death. As he arrived, the maids caught sight of him and whispered breathlessly among themselves. That's him, oh my! Cárcel, unbothered, had already made his peace with the situation in his own self-serving way. If that's the case, I should have as much fun as I can before the wedding. At least then, if I have to live out the rest of my life like a monk, I won't have any regrets. My scoundrel-like ways will soon be behind me. I have no other choice. He opened the door. Inés stood there, and for a brief moment their eyes met. She was the first to speak, her voice perfectly composed. Lord Cárcel, Inés, he replied. Believe you wanted to see me about something, she said evenly. I did, Cárcel said, something shifting in his tone. In fact, I not only needed to see you yesterday, but also 3 days ago, as well as 2 weeks ago. Inés met his words without a flinch. We had terrible rain. I simply didn't want to put you out on my account. Cárcel studied her carefully. This reaction is to be expected given what she saw, but she has never ignored me like this before. That day, he began slowly. I know how you must have felt. But even as the words left his mouth, another thought gnawed at the back of his mind. But whose fault is it? That I must live like a monk for the rest of my life? Inés tilted her head with practiced calm. I don't quite understand what it is you're trying to say, Lord Cárcel. You know exactly what I'm saying, he pressed. I don't. Not at all. Cárcel fell quiet for a moment, his thoughts drifting somewhere deeper. She changed my life with a single point of her finger. To call this woman submissive would be a complete and utter joke. But Inés Valeztena loves me. She chose me out of love, giving up her noble status and her birthright to marry into the imperial family as a result. There were numerous opportunities for her to undo it all, but she threw them away. Whether it was 17 years ago or now, she's been waiting for me, out of love, right in the same place where she's always been, and that was always the problem. Inés Valeztena loves me, but I don't like her at all. I spent ages drowning myself in guilt because of it. He steadied himself and tried again. I can explain everything. I saw you with my own eyes, Inés said simply. So I have all the explanation I need. And as I understand it, there's no problem at all. Cárcel blinked. Are you serious? Lord Cárcel, she said, her voice unwavering. I understand how upsetting that must have been for you. He insisted, his composure beginning to crack. At least yell at me. But I'm not upset at all, she replied. A smile crossed his face, half disbelief, half habit. Of course you're upset. No, I'm not. You refused to see me for 2 weeks because of it. That was because of the rain, Inés said without missing a beat. I didn't want you to arrive soaking wet. And frankly speaking, I find this sort of be very tiring, Lord Cárcel. You and I aren't really close enough to be having this conversation, are we? And it's not as though you were involved with just 1 or 2 women either. Cárcel went still. Did you really think I had no idea? And you aren't angry? Why should I be angry? She asked, as though the question itself confused her. You're free to be with whoever you want. I'm your fiancé, he said firmly. We're to be married soon. That doesn't mean you have to lose your freedom right now, Inés replied. And besides, you and I aren't married yet, so do whatever you want. This isn't funny in the least, Inés. I know, she said. Like you said, I'm not saying this to you because I'm just so understanding. I'm telling you that you're free to do as you wish, she paused, letting the next words land with quiet finality, because I have no interest in you. The words hit him like cold water. Cárcel stood there, visibly shaken, the shock written plainly across his face for perhaps the first time in his life. Do you understand, Escalante? It was the summer when he turned 23, and that was when she told him that everything he had come to believe was wrong. Cárcel looked around at the gathered crowd, genuinely puzzled, and asked the question that had been sitting heavily on his mind. So, what I'm asking is, about how many years is a lifetime? Laughter broke out across the room. Cárcel stood in the middle of it all, utterly lost. Why is everyone laughing? The amusement in their eyes only deepened his annoyance. Inés turned to him with an expression caught somewhere between disbelief and exasperation. Oh dear, do you even know what that word means? You don't, do you? I know, Cárcel shot back loudly. Of course I know. Everyone does. She said, tilting her head with a calm that somehow made it worse. Explain it to me then. Well, he faltered, it's time, of course. And time is... Inés watched him struggle and thought to herself, he doesn't know. She turned away from him and quickly moved to her father's side. Do I really have to speak to Lord Cárcel? She asked, her voice dropping low. Duke Leonel Valeztena looked down at his daughter with patient eyes. Inés, you know you're much smarter than children your age, he said gently. It's natural to feel frustrated. That's why you must practice not ignoring him even if he isn't as smart as you. If your friend doesn't know something, you must teach him kindly. You shouldn't make him feel stupid just because he's a bit dense. From across the room. Cárcel caught enough of the exchange to feel the sting of it. They think I'm stupid. But I don't need any friends, Inés replied to her father, and Lord Cárcel is my fiancé, not my friend. Exactly, Lionel said with a soft nod. That is why you must be even kinder to him, like a sweet young lady. Inés straightened with quiet dignity. I may have a bad personality, but I'm a lady nevertheless, father. Lionel smiled to himself. My little girl always has to have the last word. Inés turned back toward Cárcel, her voice firm and instructive. Escalante, listen carefully. Only a dead person can tell you how long a lifetime is. Cárcel's eyes went wide. Dead people can talk? No, she replied. That's why no one who's living knows the answer. Then how would a dead person know? Because they've experienced death. Inés glanced at him sideways, a quiet thought passing through her mind. He only learned about death 4 or so months ago. Cárcel pressed on earnestly. So, I also have to die to find out. It's because a lifetime is the amount of time you have until death, Inés explained with measured patience. So it only ends when you die, if you think of it like that. I'm sure you can do the math, and figure out how long your lifetime will be. Cárcel went quiet for a moment, then asked in complete sincerity, how would I die? I mean, my grandfather's leg started rotting after he got shot in Nunara. Does that mean I'll lose my leg like he did? Will I have to live with you until they chop it off? Inés blinked. Your grandfather lived for 10 more years after he lost his leg. So, you're saying I really will have to chop it off? Cárcel cried out, his voice breaking into something close to a wail. And if I don't, he continued, tears beginning to well up in his eyes, then I have to marry you. We'll do more than just get married, Inés added plainly. We have to have a baby together too. I don't want to, he wailed. The nobles nearby exchanged wide-eyed glances. Oh dear, what's going on? Inés let the chaos settle around her before speaking again, her voice quiet and carrying a strange softness to it. The truth is, it might not last a lifetime. Cárcel blinked. What? She smiled just barely. I'm talking about our marriage. Before either of them could say another word, the voice of the Majesty rang out across the hall, loud and celebratory. Now, let's raise our glasses to Cárcel Escalante de Esposa and Inés Valeztena de Perez, who shall marry once they come of age. Through the unification of this beautiful couple that shall spend a lifetime together, may the alliance between these two families only be strengthened. The nobles responded with enthusiasm. Hear, hear, your Majesty. The Majesty continued, his voice full of ceremony. Inés Valeztena will become the lady of the Escalante family, and Cárcel Escalante will become the son-in-law of the Valeztena family. And to the delight of the imperial family, they shall devote themselves to one another's families until their dying days. Inés listened to every word of that toast and felt something settle in her chest like a stone. I'm almost certain it started with that cursed toast, she thought quietly. From that day forward, my whole perfect life began falling apart. Not far away, Cárcel sat beside his cousin, Oscar Valenza de Ortega, the crown prince, who was watching him with barely concealed irritation. I still can't understand, Cárcel murmured. Why you? Oscar said sharply. Cárcel looked at him blankly. I don't really know either. Well, you should try harder to figure it out, Oscar snapped. When we grow up and I become your emperor, are you going to just stare at me like an idiot when I ask you a question? You must have done something to Lady Valeztena, I'm sure of it. It was your darned face, wasn't it? I'm only 6 years old, Your Highness, Cárcel said flatly. Exactly, Oscar replied, as though that made it worse. How dare a 6-year-old be so cunning? I'll be 7 soon, though, so a mere 7-year-old dared to. But you're only 10 years old yourself. Oscar's expression darkened. Didn't you know she was mine? Inés never belonged to you, Cárcel replied quietly. You dare to steal your master's property? Oscar's voice rose with fury. I won't punish you since you're my uncle's son, but our union was supposed to be for the sake of the imperial family. Beneath his anger, Oscar's thoughts told a more complicated story. When Inés refused the crown prince's proposal and chose Cárcel instead, it was Empress Cayetana who brought Cárcel before the girl, almost as if she had been waiting for the moment. Not once did she even question Inés for her insolence in refusing the emperor's son. Instead, as she kindly urged Inés to make her own choice, the empress was sending a message. She may have needed to maintain an alliance with House Valeztena, but she most certainly didn't want this gloomy child. Although she needed Inés, she didn't believe Inés was worthy of her son. She refused me, Oscar said at last, his voice dropping into something colder, and chose an idiot like you, that brainless little crow. I thought you liked Inés, Cárcel said simply. Me? Like that crow? You wanted her before. Oscar let out a short laugh. Wanting and liking are two different things, Cárcel. I wanted to marry Inés. That doesn't mean I love her. She just happens to have the best bloodline we could possibly marry into. He straightened, composing himself with the ease of someone who had never truly been denied anything. Anyway, let's pay a little visit to your crow of a fiancé. There is still much time until you both become adults. The moment Oscar stepped into the Valeztena residence, both Cárcel and Inés arrived at the exact same thought at the exact same time. He obviously isn't welcome here. In fact, she looks like she absolutely hates him. Cárcel blinked, mildly startled by the coincidence. He sure knows how to pick up on negative energy. I don't think I said anything out loud, though. Inés, composed as ever, turned to face the crown prince with a smile so perfectly polished it could have cut glass. It's customary to give at least a week's notice before paying someone a visit. But for some reason, it seems that your highness must have felt so incredibly comfortable coming to our residence that you ignored proper etiquette, and thus we were not able to properly receive you. I'm not sure how best to express my sincerest apologies. Both Cárcel and Oscar responded at the same time. Inés shot a sideways glance at Cárcel. Because of your stupidity, I've ended up looking rude. Cárcel watched the exchange with quiet disbelief. He doesn't get what she's saying at all. I just think this meeting would be better if I were more prepared, Inés said carefully. This isn't a good time. How can he be so oblivious to what Inés is saying? Cárcel thought. But Oscar was already moving on, his expression brightening with enthusiasm. I wanted to talk to you about that book you introduced me to, The Life of Don Juan by Andrés de Gonzalo. Cárcel watched the exchange with quiet disbelief. He doesn't get what she's saying at all. I just think this meeting would be better if I were more prepared, Inés said carefully. This isn't a good time. How can he be so oblivious to what Inés is saying? Cárcel thought. But Oscar was already moving on, his expression brightening with enthusiasm. I wanted to talk to you about that book you introduced me to, The Life of Don Juan by Andrés de Gonzalo. I read it for the second time a few days ago. I see, Inés replied flatly. There were so many memorable lines that I couldn't help but want to read it again. My love affair with literature is a real problem. At this rate, I won't have any time to study imperial rulership. Perhaps I shouldn't have recommended the book to you after all. Oh, don't be silly, Oscar said, leaning slightly forward. It's always a pleasure to discuss these thought-provoking topics with you. After all, it can be such a lonely existence for intelligent people like us. We must constantly endure the ignorance of the masses. Cárcel stared at him. What are you even talking about? This is truly ridiculous. That's why whenever I see you, Oscar continued, his voice dropping into something softer and more deliberate, I feel like I can finally breathe. Your naive young fiancé likely hasn't yet realized the pain people like us must endure. He paused, as though noticing Cárcel for the first time. Oh, have you been here this whole time? Hey, why are you dragging me into this? Cárcel said, frowning. Oscar ignored him entirely and turned back to Inés, his voice taking on a grander, more sweeping tone. You'll struggle to meet anyone who is your intellectual equal aside from me, so why would you gamble away your life? He straightened, and with all the weight of his title behind him, he spoke. Inés Valeztena de Pérez, I will give you a chance to correct your wrong decision. In the name of the Ortega imperial family, I ask you to marry me. The room went very still. I don't like you. Oscar froze. Inés held his gaze without flinching. I don't like you, your highness. So, my answer is no. Oscar's fist clenched slowly at his side. What is your reason? Inés turned her head. Cárcel, come over here. You're my fiancé, so why aren't you defending me? Leave the half-wit out of this, Oscar said sharply. Cárcel, Inés said again, her voice calm but pointed. The crown prince is making me uncomfortable. This isn't a matter for kiddies, Oscar cut in. The grown-ups are talking. Lady Inés is 6 years old, Cárcel said simply. Oscar looked at Inés with something close to desperation hidden beneath his composure. You think Inés is anything like you? What do you want from me? Cárcel watched his cousin carefully from the side. He made a big show about how wanting and liking are different, but it looks like my big important cousin might really like Inés. Then, without a word, Inés stepped backward. Directly behind Cárcel, she blinked, surprised by her own instinct. Huh? Oscar went rigid with shock. So this is how you want to play it? I don't want to play anything, Cárcel said quietly. You're really going to disrespect the crown prince? I told you to stay out of this. Cárcel. Oscar turned back to Inés, his voice shifting into something softer, almost pleading. Inés, I know you didn't mean what you said. Understand that you must feel like you aren't worthy. After all, I will rule over this empire someday. I've heard enough, Inés said under her breath. Just tell him no. Oscar pressed on, undeterred. But, Inés, all I need is you to give me my wings. Together, you and I will rule Ortega. Inés exhaled slowly. What are you doing, Cárcel? This is giving me a terrible headache, Cárcel. Then Cárcel, standing between the two of them, thought with quiet exhaustion, how long do I have to suffer like this? For how long? Do I have to be stuck between these two? Remember that you're still just a 6-year-old boy, Inés said at last. You don't have a master yet. Cárcel turned, pushed the door open, and walked out. Inés followed without looking back. Cárcel? Oscar called after them, but the door had already closed. Outside in the hall, Cárcel still had Inés by the hand. She looked down at it. I'm fine now. You can let go of my hand. Is your headache better? He asked. I was obviously lying, she said. Cárcel went quiet for a moment. Are you not afraid of dying? How could you lie to the crown prince? The imperial family would never embarrass themselves by reprimanding House Valeztena over something like this, Inés replied without missing a beat. Besides, your cousin was the one harassing me. Cárcel stared at her, a thought forming slowly in his mind. Why on earth does he like a girl like her? She speaks so rudely, and she isn't very pretty either. Spella, fetch me some water, Inés said to her maid. Cárcel's thought trailed off unexpectedly. But maybe she is a little cute, he caught himself. What am I thinking? No, even if she is, I'm way too good for her. Escalante, Inés said. Wash your hands. Before he could respond, she reached out and took his hand. Cárcel went completely still. A girl is touching my hands. Wait, he started. 3 minutes passed. He stood there in a mild stupor while Inés calmly washed and then dried his hands as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. She's treating me like I'm an idiot, he thought. Inés dried his hands too. Inés looked up at him. Escalante, what's wrong with you? You didn't call me Escalante earlier, he said quietly. Do you want me to call you by your first name? She asked. I thought you hated me. I don't, he said too quickly. But you kept crying about how you didn't want to marry me. I didn't cry, he said loudly. He did cry, Inés thought. And you cried again when I said we'd have to live together until death do us part, she continued. You also cried when I said we'd need to have a baby. Please stop, Valeztena, he said, his face flushing red. Why do I feel so embarrassed? He thought miserably. Inés studied him for a moment, then said simply, All right, I'll call you by your name, Cárcel. Something shifted quietly inside him at the sound of it. In all my life, he thought. I've never had anyone else treat me this way. You and you alone. So come here, she said. Are the only person who does this to me. Cárcel looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable passing across his face. You're strange, Inés. Me? She said. People say you like me. But if you really did, you wouldn't treat me the way you do. Inés tilted her head. Is it strange that I would like you? You really like me? I wouldn't have decided to marry you if I didn't, she said simply. People say you just don't understand what a great honor it is to marry the crown prince. And that you only chose me because I have a pretty face. She paused, then added without any particular feeling, That's true, I did choose you because of your face. Is there anyone in this world who doesn't like pretty things? Cárcel blinked. Do you really like my face? Yes, Inés replied. It has its uses. That's how you think of people, he sputtered. You say you like me, yet you're being so rude. Don't you want to impress me? What is it I'm lacking that I should want to impress you? If you want me to like you back, you should at least... You're mistaken, Inés said, cutting him off cleanly. You don't have to like me at all. I don't need you to. She met his eyes with quiet certainty. Cárcel Escalante, the only thing you need to remember is that I like you very much. I have no interest in you, Escalante. And somewhere deep in Cárcel's memory, that moment crystallized. That's right, I knew something was wrong from that moment. Now, standing alone inside her room at the Valeztena residence, Cárcel let his eyes move slowly across the space. Everything looked exactly as it always had. Not a single thing had changed in all these years. His thoughts churned restlessly. No interest? Did her feelings for me change? She was always quite shy, so she only ever expressed her affection through letters. But her devotion to me has long been known throughout high society. Even this room is still the same, but I'm sure it's here somewhere. Something that can explain why her feelings have changed. A clue, if you will. Is it because she feels awkward that our bodies are different now that we've grown up? Or was it before I entered the military academy? No. Even when people give her dirty looks, Inés is always so. What are you doing here? Escalante. He turned. Inés had appeared in the doorway, watching him with that familiar expression of measured impatience. At least she isn't still calling me Lord like she was last time, he thought with faint relief. Then his eyes drifted just briefly, and something else occurred to him entirely. But one thing in this room has definitely changed. Even in that shapeless dress that looks fit for a funeral. There's no hiding the fact that her body has matured beautifully. It shall be my one joy in life as a married man, Inés. Watching his face cycle through expressions with suspicious intensity, thought to herself, looks like he's having lewd thoughts again while pretending to be deep in thought. Why aren't you interested in me? He asked at last. There's no hidden meaning, so don't worry yourself about it, she said. That's not a good enough answer. I only said it to make you feel better, Inés replied. I told you I knew all about your personal escapades and that you didn't have to worry about me. You do realize you aren't making any sense, right? Yep, Cárcel said cheerfully. Inés exhaled slowly. You're acting like I've found myself another man or something. Have you? She paused, almost amused. Is that important? Cárcel nodded, without hesitation. Inés looked away. I'm a wallflower who no one wants. It's like your cousin said before. I'm the crow of House Valeztena, Cárcel said quietly. Then, after a beat, he added, the reason men aren't after you is because you already have an exceedingly handsome fiancé. But even as the words left his mouth, the thought continued privately, tucked away where she couldn't see it. In a sea of vibrant birds, she stands out like a black crow. With that body, she could subdue even the stupidest of noblemen. But true as that may be, I can't just tell her she's beautiful because of her body. I'd sound like a pig. Inés, entirely unaware of the internal war he was waging, continued calmly. Women show interest in you because my looks aren't threatening, unlike yours. I know this and I don't care. I have no complaints regarding this marriage or you. There is no reason to ruin our relationship over something so trivial. So you're saying that our relationship, you're good marriage material, she said. Cárcel stared at her. Marriage material? Are you sure you're all there mentally? Cárcel stood his ground, something urgent and uncharacteristically raw rising up in him. Inés, stop. I'm not done talking yet. I'm not interested in hearing anymore, she said, turning away. No, you need to listen. Listen carefully, Inés. Before he knew what he was doing, his hand had closed around her wrist, holding on with a firmness that surprised even himself. I don't want to hear it, she said. Damn it, just listen to me for 1 second. It's not what you think. But even as the words came out, his own mind was turning against him. Why am I doing this? What is going on here? Why am I holding on to her wrist? How did things become so dramatic? When Inés finally turned back to face him, her eyes were glistening. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than before, and somehow that made it worse. Then what should I think? How am I supposed to interpret your relationship with that woman? My relationship with that woman? Cárcel thought. But what truly stopped him cold was not the question. It was the look on her face. Actually, what I really can't believe is the look on Inés' face right now. There's nothing to interpret, she said, her voice breaking slightly. Nothing is going on between us. This can't be real. And then, without fully understanding why, he pulled her into his arms. You know you're the only one who matters to me. Am I actually saying this? He held her tighter, the warmth of her against him feeling both entirely right and completely impossible. This is impossible. Do you think I'm going to fall for that? She said into his chest. You're so... He held her closer still, and something in her snapped. Let me go. Just how much more do you plan on insulting me? You're disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. What is going on? How does this situation make any sense? You're filthy. How dare you put your hands on me? Inés. That hurts. Get away from me. Let me go. Don't you dare call my name with those filthy lips. This can't be happening. You're like a filthy dog in heat, she cried. Something in Cárcel broke open, and what came out was neither graceful nor calculated. My body wouldn't have reacted this way if it weren't you in my arms. You're the only woman who can do this to me. Make it stop. You're the only one who can give me an erection. Hey, you crazy bastard. The tension between them stretched and shifted into something else entirely. Inés went still in his arms, her tears not yet dry, her expression unreadable. You're saying you'll let me go if I trust you, right? She said quietly. Then prove to me I can. A long silence fell between them. Show me. How much you want me, Cárcel? Why aren't you wearing anything underneath? I always go without whenever I come to see you, she said softly. I'd always hoped that you would one day take me in your arms and familiarize yourself with my body. I've been waiting for this moment, for a very long time. This must be a dream, Cárcel thought, the world around him going soft at the edges. It's just a harmless dream. There's no misery or sadness here. It's just a little dream, where Inés gets naked. And that's why I can't ever wake up from this dream. Never. Their lips met. Cárcel. Cárcel, get up! You promised to spar with me this morning. He opened his eyes slowly, the dream dissolving like smoke in morning light. Damn it. He lay there for a moment, the memory of her words drifting back through the silence. I don't want to waste any energy on a man like you, who I don't even like. That's right, he told himself. I'm free to live my life as I please. I can do everything out in the open now. Why? Because my fiancé doesn't care one bit. When I think about it, get out, he said flatly to whoever was at the door. Now. He stared at the ceiling, jaw set, thoughts sharpening back into something harder. Today's incident was clearly her fault as well. Honestly, he muttered to himself, I'm glad she has no interest in me. I couldn't be happier. Out on the training ground, Cárcel moved through his drills with quiet precision. His captain stood nearby, watching him with the particular expression of a man who had noticed something he was not supposed to notice. Are you aware that you've been repeating the same few words to yourself since you arrived? The captain said. Have I been? You were talking about your fiancée, Lady Inés. I'm so happy I believe it was. The captain paused. When your superior speaks, you should just listen quietly. I've just never seen you talk this much, Captain. You must really be pleased about what she said to you. Cárcel raised his weapon, took aim, and fired cleanly at the target. You don't even know how to shoot properly, yet you're critiquing me? I apologize. I didn't mean it that way, sir, the captain said quickly. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, I'm honestly envious. I mean, it's every man's dream. What is? A wife who doesn't chain down her husband. Cárcel's expression didn't shift. She isn't my wife yet. You do know I'll be getting engaged soon too, don't you? The captain pressed on. Once a man is married, he's forced to live under his wife's constant watch. There's no more freedom. What are you planning to do after you get married that you're already worrying about your freedom? Cárcel said, turning to look at him. Do you think I'm a scumbag like you? No, I wasn't implying that at all, the captain said, backpedaling rapidly. I was only saying that you're lucky to have a lady who's so thoughtful and gracious that she's willing to give her husband a chance to live as he chooses. Cárcel went quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried something beneath it, something careful and deliberately controlled. That woman isn't being thoughtful towards me. In fact, she doesn't care about me at all. That's why she's perfectly okay, regardless of what I do. The lady looked up at him with bright, eager eyes, entirely unaware of the quiet crisis unfolding behind Cárcel's composed expression. You have a rather long vacation this time, Captain. Does that bother you? He asked. Of course not, she said, her voice dropping into something warmer. I'm thrilled to know I'll be able to watch you all summer. Gosh, how did God make you so perfect? You have that handsome face and such a strong, perfect body. I'm so envious of your fiancé. You're the only one who can turn me on like this. Cárcel went very still. My lady, please, back away from me. The lady blinked, disbelief spreading across her face. I don't believe this. How can you do this to me? You're supposed to be mine for the night. I apologize, he said quietly. Lord Cárcel? Captain Escalante? But Cárcel was no longer fully present in the room. His thoughts had pulled him somewhere else entirely. This doesn't make any sense. Weren't those words? Just some nonsense, I blurted out in a dream. No, that silly dream was supposed to be meaningless. Are you trying to arouse me even more? The lady said, flustered. Things said in a dream shouldn't have any power over me. SOI, is this happening? You really are perfect. Why can't I get it up? He thought, the words searing through him with humiliating clarity. I'll wait for you right here, she called after him brightly. Cárcel stood apart, running through the situation with mounting horror. After the wedding, I won't have any option aside from Inés Valeztena, so I can't be unable to perform. This has to be a curse. Or maybe it's just broken temporarily. Yes, that has to be it. There is no way that I, at this age, can be impotent. No, just calm down. There is no way. But ever since that night, whenever I think about Inés, of course, I'm not impotent at all. It's just broken. Very badly broken. He took a slow breath, convincing himself firmly. It's all right. Inés isn't coming today anyway, so I can just... I'm sorry I'm late. He turned. Inés stood there, composed and unhurried, as though she had not just completely dismantled his plan to recover in peace. I had planned to get here on time, but Luciano. Why? Cárcel said, the word coming out barely above a whisper. Are you here? You hardly ever come to these events despite being invited, she observed. But I knew you would be coming, he said before he could stop himself. Inés looked at him with quiet reproach. Lord Cárcel, please avoid making that undignified facial expression in public. She touched my cheek with her bare hand. The thought arrived soft and unbidden. And whose fault is it that I look like? He started, then caught himself. Never mind. An awkward silence settled between them like a held breath. Inés spoke first. I'm sorry about before. I'm not sure the reason, but you seemed a bit rattled about what happened. Is that why you came today? You could have seen me any other time. I didn't really think it necessary to create a separate occasion just for us to meet, she replied. Ah, you mean because we aren't close enough to warrant that? Have I perhaps upset you again? Stop being so polite, Cárcel said, an edge creeping into his voice. I find it both uncomfortable and disturbing. You make it seem like I'm the impolite one here, all on my own. Inés studied him carefully. Why are you so testy today? Ever since earlier, your behavior has been awfully strange. By the time Cárcel came back to his senses, he was already inside the carriage. He had no clear memory of how he had gotten there. It's nothing, he said. Nothing at all. Inés sat across from him, watching him with an expression caught between concern and exasperation. Is it me, or is this man crazy? Cárcel stared out the window, his thoughts unraveling quietly. Why am I acting like this? It's not like I'm some hormonal teenager or a pervert. Inés, for her part, was arriving at a similar conclusion from a very different angle. Why are you doing this, Cárcel? Have you finally lost your mind? Well, if you're awake now, she said evenly. How about getting out of the carriage? You'll need to escort me in, of course, huh? We're already here? Wait, this is my home. What is the matter? Inés said, patience wearing thin at the edges. I told you that we were headed toward the Escalante residence. Weren't you listening? Ah, right, he said quickly. He can't remember, Inés thought. She let a beat pass before continuing. I realize that having to see me isn't exactly pleasant for you. But if you keep acting this way, it's going to be a problem for me as well. Inés, you know very well that I don't find you bothersome, Cárcel said. At any rate, let's get out. He reached for her hand and helped her down from the carriage. Cel took his arm as they stepped out together into the open air. And the moment they appeared, every pair of eyes in the vicinity widened. This, Cárcel thought, the warmth of her hand against his arm cutting straight through every carefully constructed wall he had built since that morning, is torture. Such painful torture. He kept his face perfectly still, perfectly composed, as the eyes of the crowd moved over them both. Damn you, Inés Valeztena. As they stepped into the reception room of the Escalante residence, Inés glanced around and spoke first. Escalante, don't you think this space is a bit too open for us to talk? Is there a reason why we can't talk here? Cárcel replied. No, but we do have to discuss something personal. The room is private enough, he said, settling into his chair. Go ahead and speak. Inés took a breath. You left in such a hurry last time that we didn't get to finish our conversation. I didn't leave in a hurry. I appreciate the effort you made to conceal the truth from me, she continued, ignoring the denial. Specifically, I'm referring to your earnest attempts to keep your indecent lifestyle from being exposed. I know you did so out of respect for me. Cárcel looked at her for a long moment. I know I should be keeping my mouth shut, given that I am the one at fault here, but it seems you really have lost your mind. Just let me finish, Escalante. Inés folded her hands neatly in her lap. I meant it when I said that you don't have to worry about covering up who you meet. I have no interest in you, and I know you aren't interested in me either. For the rest of our engagement, we can simply continue as we have been, neither of us interfering in the other's personal life, and that goes for after the wedding as well. As long as neither of us behaves in a way that is openly disrespectful. We can do as we please and stay out of each other's business. Cárcel went very still. You're saying we can do whatever we want in private? So, you plan on doing something behind my back, is that it? You're going to have your cake anyway, so you're letting me have mine too? He stood slowly, crossed the room, and sat himself on the edge of the table directly in front of her. Inés looked up at him. Escalante, people sit on chairs, not tables. Well, I don't think I'll suddenly become a toad just because I sat on a table. Are you a child? Before you call me a child, you should consider what nonsense you just spat out. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing slightly. So, this whole show of yours was all for your lover? He tilted closer. Tell me, are you doing this so you can keep seeing him? The thought assembled itself with cold logic behind his eyes. That would explain everything. It would explain why she ignored my misdeeds, why she gave me permission to do as I please, and why she went as far as to detail how we'll live our lives as a married couple. Who knows? Maybe it's not just one man, but several. I can't even imagine how many men she might have seduced with her porcelain skin and that voluptuous body. Considering her personality and the way she orders people around, I'm sure she would have been able to control anyone with just a few words. But after we get married, there is no man, Inés said quietly. He blinked. Is it wrong for me to want to make your life a little easier? That's the sole reason I even suggested that this be a reciprocal agreement. I just want you to be free. She paused, something softer moving beneath the surface of her composure. After all, your life was altered because of me. You ended up becoming engaged to me, even though it was something you never wanted. You even had to step up as the heir of your house at such a young age, and all because of me. She looked down briefly before continuing. We were supposed to be married 6 years ago, but you entered the military academy just to delay the wedding. You even ended up enlisting. Truthfully, you did me a favor. It wasn't that I didn't like you. I was just happy that our marriage was postponed for an indefinite period of time. I'm sure this means nothing to you. Nothing to me? The words landed harder than she could have known. Cárcel felt something surge up inside him, hot and entirely unreasonable. What I want to know is why this suddenly means nothing to you. You want to let it all go just for my convenience? You boarded a naval ship and went off to battle, Inés said, her voice remaining steady even as the words cut close, just to put off spending the rest of your life with your plain Jane nun of a fiancé. No, that doesn't make sense. She must have some ulterior motive, so I'll make it up to you, she said. I'll make sure you have even more freedom after we're married. I've come to see every side of you over the last 17 years, he thought. That's why I'm certain about this. I will be your wife in name only, Inés said softly, and I will lead a life that's separate from yours, Cárcel. He leaned in and kissed her. When they finally parted, Cárcel's voice was low and unhurried, as though he had made up his mind about something long before this moment. I thought you said we needed to make babies together? Do you not plan on doing that with me? He watched her face carefully before continuing. I'm sorry to break this to you, Inés, but you and I won't be living separate lives. You'll have to kiss me hundreds upon hundreds of times, and our bodies will come together thousands of times. I won't be laying a finger on any woman other than you. We will be together when you bear our first child and when you bear the next one after that. And even when we're not making children, I will be sure to satisfy you, and I will make you satisfy me. I have no need for any so-called freedom or a personal life. Inés stared at him. My definition of marriage doesn't include those things. Cárcel held her gaze without flinching. I may be an awful bastard, but I'm far more faithful than you think, Inés Valeztena. This is the story of Inés Valeztena, told from her own point of view. Inés' first life ended at the age of 26. Only those who have died know how long a lifetime truly is, and that is how she, too, came to know the limits of her fleetingly insignificant life. She knew because she had died once before, but the knowledge she had obtained had not come solely from death. After all, her first life ending at the age of 26 had been the result of none other than her own decisions. It had happened so long ago, and yet, the hopelessness she had felt at the time remained fresh in her mind. She remembered the crown prince's doltish face being the last thing she saw, and the chaos that had consumed her 26th year. The one and only daughter of Duke Valeztena had achieved the status of being part of the Grandes de Ortega. She had been born into one of the most powerful families in the empire, and she was a lady who had always enjoyed being adorned extravagantly. The Duke had spared no expense to satisfy his daughter's fine taste, and in doing so, she had become a constant leader in fashion throughout the city of Mendoza. Back in those days, noblewomen regularly applied near-toxic powders to their skin in pursuit of a paler complexion. But after Inés returned from a summer trip with bronze skin, tanning soon gained popularity across high society. Inés had been truly living the high life. Every week, magazines were busy praising the crown princess-to-be for her class and dignity. She was beloved by the crown prince, and she was living the life of a beautiful young woman on the cusp of everything she had ever wanted. At the time, Inés had been so happy with her perfect life that she made an effort to perfect it even further. Every day, she nagged her seamstresses to design new dresses for her, and she combed through countless invitations to decide which events would both improve her reputation and allow her to be the center of attention. Inés often starved herself in pursuit of a slim waist, but because she wanted people to believe she had simply been born with a naturally slender figure, She made a show of eating heartily at formal dinners, and then quietly disappeared afterward to undo it all. Was she living a normal life? Inés wasn't sure. It was at this time that she began spiraling with doubt. She couldn't tell whether she had done it all to become the perfect woman for the crown prince, or whether she had simply used him to achieve the perfect life she had always imagined for herself. But she did love him. She loved him, though it had only been a few years, and even though he had made her fall for his despicable lies. And even if her reasons had been vain and it was actually the reputation and the status that she had truly loved. Love? How could it have been love? How could she have loved someone like him even for a moment? Inés had suffered 4 miscarriages, and each time she lost a child, both the imperial family and the empress had blamed her for it, openly assaulting her with their disdain. That had been her life as a married woman for 10 long years. Oscar never once took her side. He ignored her pleas for comfort and, in the end, concluded that she had simply been born with a cursed womb incapable of producing a living child. Although her life dazzled from the outside, she was dying on the inside. Things were far from normal for her after she got married. Normal life had simply become an impossibility. In the end, when she learned that her perfectly pristine husband had been infected with everything imaginable from his debauched lifestyle, and that it had been the cause of all her children dying. When she was tortured by the memories of all those terrible nights when her filthy husband had forced himself upon her pregnant body, ignoring every attempt she made to refuse him just to satisfy his own desire, she was left with nothing but the wreckage of what her life had become. He had been the only man she had ever known, and her body was now marred with proof of all the depraved nights he had spent with other women. She had never done a shameful thing in her life, yet she was being punished for having married that cesspool of a human. But even worse than the diseases he carried was his desire. Had been well aware of what he carried, and yet not once had he hesitated to take what he wanted from his unassuming wife. He hadn't cared about her, nor about producing an heir. It wasn't even that he had done it out of spite. He had simply acted without a single thought. When she looked back on her life, she came to consider those 4 miscarriages as blessings. If even one of those children had survived, it would have been an irreversible sin. Inés, please don't do this. You aren't in your right mind. You aren't able to think clearly right now. My mind has never been clearer, she said. Cárcel stood before her, his face pale, something desperate flickering behind his eyes that he had never shown before. The fact that she hadn't birthed a single living child had been the only consolation in her miserable life. You said no one in the Ortega family has ever gotten divorced, didn't you? Inés said, her voice perfectly steady. You told me that you couldn't be the first failure in the imperial family. Well, now I'm going to turn you into a true failure. You will be the very first prince to make his wife commit suicide. I'm going to kill myself, because living with you disgusts me. I can't spend another minute, no, not even one more second with someone like you. And then she was gone. Just like that, she had killed herself. No one could have come up with a more peaceful conclusion. Her death had not harmed anyone, not even the crown prince, who had been little more than a gutter rat. The only harm he suffered came as a result of her will, where she had revealed every last detail of his filthy escapades to the world. She hadn't expected any great compensation. She had merely hoped that if there was a god, she would be taken somewhere better. And with that quiet resolve, she had closed her eyes, decided that it wouldn't matter even if that turned out not to be the case. So when she woke up on the hunting ground where she had spent her childhood, she had absolutely no idea what had happened. Inés, stop! Luciano's voice rang out across the open ground, urgent and breathless, as the two of them ran through the familiar landscape of the Valeztena estate, called after her again, Inés. But she didn't slow until her legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed under the shade of a tree, chest heaving. Luciano caught up and stood over her, panting, his expression somewhere between exasperated and genuinely alarmed. Goodness, Inés, what on earth has gotten into you? Ouch, she said, staring up at the sky. That really hurt. She was quiet for a moment. This isn't a dream? Of course it's not a dream. Either way. She turned her head and looked at him, really looked at him, and something moved across her face. My God, look at how fresh-faced you are. I can't believe the great Luciano Valeztena is just a young pup of 19. Luciano Valeztena, Inés' older brother, frowned down at her. Inés, you're doing it again. You're acting strange today. Did you perhaps take mother's medication by mistake? Juana, standing nearby with her hands clasped, offered gently, My lord, perhaps Lady Inés is acting this way because of her wedding. That's the only reason I can think of, Luciano agreed. But didn't she say she couldn't wait for it? Inés turned to Juana with wide, almost reverent eyes. Juana, you look so pretty and young. Gosh, look at your skin. Did you just turn 17 this year? Stop it already, Inés, Luciano said flatly. You sound like a perverted old man lusting over young girls. I've been asking her to stop all afternoon, but I don't think she's hearing me, Juana said. Please snap out of it, my lady. But Inés was no longer truly listening. She sat quietly and watched the two of them, Luciano and Juana, laughing and talking as though no time had passed at all, and something deep inside her cracked open. My whole life in Perez came to a stop when I turned 16. The moment he put that veil over my head, I was unable to return to the castle of Perez until the time of my death. Everyone I cared about here, the beautiful garden where I used to play with Luciano, and even that place at the top of the castle, all became a distant memory. I had no idea how things were faring here, or how the people I'd left behind had changed. But now, all those things have miraculously reappeared in front of me just as they were. She looked at the garden, at the light filtering through the trees, at the season hanging gently in the air around her. It was spring then, she murmured. The last spring I spent here in Perez was 10 years ago. It's still spring, she said quietly. Spring hasn't passed yet. It's still that time in Valeztena. Luciano crouched beside her, his voice gentling slightly. You will be wedded to the crown prince in 4 months. In fact, you'll be leaving for Mendoza in 2 weeks. Everyone in Mendoza will be trying their best to find fault with you. After all, Lord Oscar is already too good for you, so I understand that you must be feeling the pressure of it all, but Inés's hand shot out and grabbed him by the collar before he could finish. Who? She said very quietly. Who's too good for who? Who did you say is too good for me? Inés, you've clearly lost your, my lady. Please stop, my lady. What followed was not particularly dignified. Luciano, to his considerable misfortune, found himself on the receiving end of a beating that he had absolutely not anticipated from his younger sister. My lord, are you all right? Juana rushed to his side. We need to treat your wounds right away. Inés stood back, slightly breathless, and a thought settled over her with the weight of absolute certainty. Ah, this sensation seems too authentic not to be real. This is truly real. Both the hopelessness of my life at age 26 and my naivete with age 16. When I dreamt of becoming Oscar's wife, none of it was a dream. I've returned to that point in time, when I was 16, and the wedding was 4 months away. This is before everything in my life was ruined. She stood very still, the warmth of spring light falling across her young face, and felt something shift quietly inside her chest. I've actually been rewarded for my patience. What a blessing. This is a chance for me to finish my life properly before I go to heaven. At least, that was what she believed at the time. That was back when she had experienced death only once. We've been engaged for 10 years, and the wedding is just around the corner, so I know what reaction to expect. At that moment in time, Oscar was practically a saint who boasted cool intellect and an upright image. He was the crown prince who had preserved his chastity to share with his new bride on their wedding night. So, who would believe me if I said that he would be frequenting the brothels in 2 years' time and become riddled with venereal diseases? She exhaled slowly, a quiet decision forming behind her eyes. There's no need to waste this precious opportunity on a useless fight. I won't ever marry Oscar again. And if I'm to make sure of that, she said softly, almost to herself, I'll need to be a bit more cunning. The nobles huddled together in hushed, delighted whispers, their voices carrying just far enough to be heard. Did you see him earlier? I'm referring to the portrait artist's assistant who visited the manor today. I think Our Lady is in love with him. I suppose she is at that age, isn't she? So that young man was unusually handsome too. How adorable. But what they could not have known was the quiet, calculating mind turning behind Inés' composed expression. So, what became of the woman who obediently accepted an honorable marriage and remained faithful to her husband? She thought. She felt that love might make up for the fraudulent marriage that had failed her in her first life. So when true love finally found her, she was taken by it in an instant. She lay against Emiliano, the warmth of him close and real beside her. My lady, how could I dare lie with the daughter of a duke? He whispered, his voice uncertain. Keep quiet if you don't want to be caught, she replied. A long pause, and then his voice came again, softer than before. You are so beautiful. In fact, from the moment I first saw you, I knew that I was helpless to stop myself from falling in love with you. My name is Emiliano. The 16-year-old girl disappeared from Paris with him that same season. Though penniless, they lived a happy life together for 4 years. Emiliano managed to escape for a short while with the help of another, but in the end, he returned on his own 2 feet and died before her very eyes. Duke Leonel's voice was cold and clipped, carrying the particular chill of a man who had made up his mind. Duke Valestena's daughter disappeared with some poor man, only to return with a baby. To think she was engaged to the crown prince too. How embarrassing. It's a miracle that the empress was so merciful. You need to watch her carefully, Luciano. We must make sure her wedding to Count Almanara goes smoothly. And as for that filthy offspring she gave birth to, it's best that we eliminate it. Of course, Luciano replied without hesitation. I will take care of it, father. I don't want you going painfully in some unfamiliar place. The memory of his voice came to her unbidden, as it always did. My name is Emiliano. Sometimes a single name can change your world. He had been the only color in a world made of black and white, and then he was gone. Please don't forget me. Emiliano, who had changed my world, no longer existed in it. She sat with that truth for a moment before the sharper, colder part of her mind resumed its work. It was a perfectly well thought out plan. I even chose a handsome man to marry so he would cheat on me. It was all so I could become the wife of Duke Escalante, who just happened to not live with him. But then Cárcel's voice came back to her, cutting through everything she had so carefully constructed. I may be an awful bastard, but I'm far more faithful than you think, Inés Valeztena. That is why I would never betray my own family. Inés stood very still, the weight of 17 years pressing down on her all at once. What on earth did I do wrong? She whispered. What did I miss? What mistake did I make? And Cárcel, his voice quiet but carrying something beneath it that sounded almost like disbelief, said, This plan has been in the works for 17 years. It can't all just fall apart like this. Why in the world are you betraying me, Cárcel? She finished. Juana looked up from her work with a curious tilt of her head. So, that Playboy finally wants to settle down? He even sent a proposal letter yesterday. So what's the problem? Him wanting to settle down, Inés said slowly, is precisely the problem. Ina blinked. I'm not sure I understand your line of thinking, but the lieutenant is perfect. His only fault is that he is a womanizer, but he's promised to work on his behavior. Isn't that a good thing? I've heard this a million times, Inés said with a sigh. It'd be nice not to have to hear it from you too. And that's enough oil. You used to be so fond of the lieutenant when you were young, Juana said. Now, you don't even want to hear me talk, much less apply a bit of oil on your feet. You know how much I hate having oil put on my feet. This is my first time doing this for you, so how would I know? Inés looked away. At any rate, I like the way Escalante is right now. Juana studied her for a moment. Could it be that you enjoy watching him flirt with other women? Hold on, don't look at me like that. But your fiancé is saying he doesn't want that, Juana pressed gently. It is possible he simply said a few things to please you before the wedding. But he is a soldier, after all. So I doubt he would make such statements lightly. Oh, naive Juana, Inés said, her voice dropping into something tired and knowing. Everyone lies. Soldiers lie to their superiors all the time. Yes, it's exactly as you said. How can a dog just suddenly become a man? I mean, if a dog says he'll become human tomorrow, does that make it so? You're talking to yourself, Lady Inés. I'm not wrong, Juana. So, my efforts won't be for nothing. Across the city, in a considerably less graceful scene, Cárcel's commander leaned in close and whispered something directly into his ear. Cárcel shoved him away immediately. Why do you always have to behave so suspiciously? Get away from me! But, Lieutenant, this is a confidential matter, the commander said, straightening himself. Anyhow, there is no one. She truly has no one else. The lady is well known for her decorum and chastity, so the cat tells me that there is no possibility of her having a man. She apparently spends most of her time alone in the library, so the owl believes she wouldn't have had time to pursue a lover. And according to the mouse, well, they're in a position where they can surveil everyone who frequents the Valeztena residence, and they say, oh well, intelligence is all about secret codes, you see. Cárcel stood very still, turning the information over quietly in his mind. The owl. And what about a cat? I wonder who her man is. I just wanted to know who he was, and perhaps see him for myself if possible. You wear a mask of indifference like you wouldn't even shed a drop of blood if you were wounded, but I wonder if you ever smiled brightly for another man. Lady Inés' reputation is spotless, the commander continued. From her conduct to her very way of being, she's simply perfect. But these are all things you heard from people who belong to the Valeztena family, Cárcel said. If you want to investigate someone, you must consult a variety of sources. You have done this sort of work before, haven't you? This is my first time, the commander admitted. It's your first time too, isn't it, Lieutenant? I can't believe I'm doing this, Cárcel thought. I've never felt this curious about a woman's past. I already feel like I've committed a huge crime ordering my naive subordinate to spy on her. Of course, by the end of this whole miserable affair, my subordinate Jose had obtained the information much quicker than I had anticipated. But as expected, there wasn't much to see. The answer he brought me was so obvious, and yet, so Inés doesn't have anyone. Why do I somehow feel relieved? Is it possible my fiancé is just incredibly meticulous? He asked aloud. I hear the maids all laughed at the idea, the commander replied. They say she sees men as insects. Do you not think the servants would have spilled everything for a few silver coins if there was something to tell? I asked around, but not a single person said anything that would raise any concern. It seems that some of the women you met with casually in the past have conducted their own background investigations on the lady, hoping to find a weakness. For whatever reason, the maids seemed quite accustomed to answering such questions. Wonder how many times this must have happened with those ladies for my probing to not seem suspicious at all. Indeed. There was a time when she was quite fond of me. Lieutenant, Inés Valeztena, fell out of love with my very being. I had no idea something like this could have been happening behind my back. These women were searching for weaknesses in my fiancé, who I didn't even love. They were planning to use whatever they found against her. Who can I blame but myself? This is all because of my face. But alas, such things shall not happen ever again. Lieutenant, you've already sent Duke Valeztena the proposal letter, the commander said carefully. What would you even do if you were to find any weaknesses on her now? Find weaknesses, Cárcel said. Why would I do something like that? I thought you were hoping to break your engagement by finding something to use against her. A promise is a promise. And we're talking about marriage here. This is a promise between families. How ridiculous. Why would her having a man even be considered a negative? He said. The thought completed itself privately behind his eyes. I've been with countless women myself. How unreasonable would it be for me to say I can't marry her because I think she had a lover before? Besides, regardless of whether I wanted this marriage or not, from the time I was 6 until now, I've never considered a life where I wasn't Inés' husband. I just wanted to know. He paused. By the way, when will you be returning to Kalstala after my wedding? Pardon? Then when will you be getting married? Within the next 2 weeks. That was the longest vacation I could get during the summer, including the leave of absence for my wedding. You'll have to return alongside me, so you'd better use all your vacation time as well, including your winter one. 10 days before the wedding, the Valeztena residents gathered around the dining table. Duke Leonel set down his glass and looked across at Cárcel with an expression of measured calm that somehow managed to be more unsettling than open anger. So I hear that you've been keeping a quiet lifestyle, considering that all of Mendoza knows of your escapades. I mean, it'd be practically impossible not to hear about you unless one is completely deaf. Isn't that right, Luciano? Perhaps, Luciano replied. It's all right, son. Leonel continued, his tone remaining pleasant in the particular way that very dangerous things sometimes are. We're 4 men here, after all. I'm sure your younger brother would say the same. What man wouldn't understand? A man must enjoy what he can, right? Not at all, Your Grace, Cárcel said. If you didn't enjoy it, then why did you do it? I wasn't thinking clearly. So, it isn't that you weren't thinking at all. I wasn't thinking, Your Grace. Leonel set down his glass slowly, his eyes never leaving Cárcel's face. All this time I thought you were just unfaithful, but I guess your brains are lacking as well. If lack of virtue could be considered a talent, you would certainly be the greatest genius to ever grace our empire. He let the silence sit for a moment before continuing. All right then. So, what you're saying to me is that an idiot like you thinks you're worthy of my daughter's hand? An idiot like you thinks you're worthy of my daughter's hand? Cárcel held the Duke's gaze steadily. If I am to officially take your daughter as my wife, I will be sure not to disappoint you, Your Grace. Leonel set down his glass with a soft, deliberate click. The simple fact that you're breathing right now is already a disappointment enough. How about you just die so I no longer have to feel this way? Your Grace, that's a bit. I've watched you all evening and seeing you breathe has been utter torture. I really would just like you to stop. That's enough, Father, Inés said, her voice cutting cleanly through the tension. You invited him here, so please stop being so petty. This isn't proper. Leonel turned to her with barely contained indignation. Petty? Who are you calling petty? Why ask when you already know the answer? I could have easily kicked in this man's skull, but I didn't, he said, his voice rising. I even went out of my way to feed him a proper meal. Given that, I believe I've been plenty cultured, tolerant, and generous. Yes, you've been so incredibly tolerant, Inés replied without missing a beat. That despite knowing what was going on, you chose to leave him alone up until now. I'm fine, Father. Listen here. The only reason I did nothing is because this fellow was acting like he wasn't going to marry you at all. The rumors suggested as much. But the fact is that we are getting married. You knew that as well, so please leave my fiancé alone. Across the table, Cárcel watched Inés pour herself another glass and thought to himself with quiet disbelief. I can't believe she's sucking down all that hard liquor in a situation like this. Leona looked around the table with an air of injured dignity. It seems no one is eating much this evening. Am I the only one enjoying this meal? Not at all, Luciano said brightly. The food is exquisite. Don't you agree, Cárcel? Lord Cárcel is everything to your liking, Inés added. Yes, everything's perfect. Lionel narrowed his eyes. Ha, so you finally speak. I'm surprised you haven't said a single flattering word to the woman you're about to marry. And how exactly should he be flattering me, father? He could say that you look especially beautiful today, or that your dress looks dull compared to your beauty. There are endless compliments he could have given you. Of course, Cárcel said carefully, Señorita Inés is obviously very beautiful, says the man who sold his body for pennies. Leonel snapped. Lord Cárcel has never sold his body, Luciano said, managing somehow to sound both amused and reasonable at once. And even if he had, it certainly wouldn't have been for pennies. Is this really the time to be discussing how much his body is worth? You wear a mask of indifference like you wouldn't even shed a drop of blood if you were wounded. But I wonder if you ever smiled brightly for another man. Lady Inés' reputation is spotless, the commander continued. From her conduct to her very way of being, she's simply perfect. But these are all things you heard from people who belong to the Valeztena family, Cárcel said. If you want to investigate someone, you must consult a variety of sources. You think you can disrespect her because she only cares about your looks? Father, Inés said more firmly. Do you think this is any way to treat our guest? Our guest? Leonel said, the word landing like an insult in his own mouth. That bastard is a thief and nothing more. Lord Cárcel is an honorable lieutenant in the Imperial Navy, Inés replied. And contrary to the claims you've tried to make, he has neither sold his body nor stolen anything. Let us speak only about the facts, father. Lord Cárcel has more than enough flaws to criticize without distorting the truth. Cárcel sat quietly through all of it, a thought forming slowly behind his composed expression. Duke Valeztena had his reasons. His daughter had only continued to age. Inés, you are far too kind, Leonel said, and for a moment his voice lost its edge entirely, replaced by something older and heavier. Must you go through with this marriage when I am so vehemently against it? Why don't you delay the wedding a little while longer? I see now why the Duke never protested. When I kept offering excuses to delay the wedding, Cárcel realized. He wanted the engagement to be called off. Inés has far surpassed the age when most women in Ortega get married. But with the Valeztena name, it should pose no problem for her to receive proposals from other good families. This engagement. Father, do you think lightly of the promise our family made? Inés said, has only lasted so long because, not to mention, neither the Valeztenas nor the Escalantes are an ordinary noble family, Leonel pressed on. Our position within the Grandes de Ortega has been acknowledged. That means that we do not say anything lightly. While Inés may not like me or even have any interest in me, she at least wants me. Cárcel then realized one more thing that evening. I also realized one more thing today. Inés Valeztena smiles most beautifully. Because I love Lord Cárcel, Inés said, when she lies. It was Miguel who broke the silence that followed, her voice carrying an entirely different quality from Leonel's open hostility, something softer on the surface, and far more unsettling beneath it. You know, Lord Cárcel, I have a very different opinion from the Duke. I've liked you from the beginning. I always told Inés as well. That you're far too good for her. Cárcel's eyes moved to Miguel, then drifted almost involuntarily back to the way she was positioning herself close to Inés. Why is Miguel walking so close to her? Lord Cárcel, are you listening? Of course, Your Grace. Please continue. Truthfully, Inés isn't the daughter I wanted, Miguel said with a small, practiced sigh. Everything she's ever done has been a disappointment. She wasn't always like this, of course. There was a time when she was just so adorable and lovely. But she came down with a terrible fever one day and it changed her. Ever since then, all she does is disappoint me. Just look at her, she looks like a witch. Do you really think you'll be able to endure a life with her? I think she's quite beautiful, Cárcel thought. Then again, I can see how you might find the idea intolerable, Miguel continued pleasantly. After all, I'm sure that's the reason you've tried so hard to put off the wedding. The thought of sharing a bed with her must be terrifying for you. Her looks alone are enough to make anyone vomit. She really seems to resent her. How on earth will you survive staring at that dreadful woman for the rest of your life? I beg you, Lord Cárcel, please fix her. You must. This thing she's suffering from is an illness. I can't stand it. It's as though she spends all day trying to embarrass me. Isn't this going a bit overboard to just be a complaint about her disappointing daughter? Back then, I think someone switched her soul with someone else's, Miguel said, her voice dropping into something quieter, almost conspiratorial. Sometimes she would just do the evilest things. It was like a demon had taken over her body. When she was young, there were times when she would threaten me or even harm herself. Just to show me that she wouldn't listen to a word I said. She threatened you? All I did was offer to make her look pretty. Then, for no reason, her whole demeanor would change and she would ignore me. So I decided to teach her a lesson by putting her in a barrel. I even forced her to change into nicer clothes, but I only did those things for her own good. She glanced toward Inés with an expression that managed to look almost maternal. Even today you saw how she behaved during dinner, didn't you? Her wedding is in a week, yet she stuffed herself with every morsel of food she could find. What sort of noble lady does that? I swear, she reminds me of an animal sticking its head into a feed pan. It's not like she even wears any makeup, and you've seen the way she dresses. The least she should do is skip a few meals to maintain her figure. It is, after all, her only good quality. Can't believe what I'm hearing. A mother should help her daughter so that she can be loved by her husband and not do anything to damage her reputation, but the way she looked at me that day was so vicious. From that point onward, my daughter's fate was out of my hands. I couldn't do a thing to help her out of fear for my own life. That is why it is up to you to fix her, Lord Cárcel. She really is very ill. Cárcel looked at Miguel for a long moment before he spoke. Fixing your daughter is not something I have any right to do. But you're soon to be her husband. You'll be her master. I will be her husband, Cárcel said, his voice quiet and absolute, and nothing more. And your daughter is the only woman I will be taking to bed from now on. Miguel laughed softly, waving a hand as though the whole matter were a great source of private amusement. Theft. There is one thing Inés managed to do that I actually approved of, and that was putting a chain around your neck and making you hers, back when you were too young to know any better. Miguel laughed softly to herself, her voice taking on a tone of fond recollection. Gosh, you were only 6 then. Cárcel blinked. Pardon? It was when the Empress declared you had to marry Inés. You cried all day because you were scared. Honestly, no 6-year-old knows what they're doing at that age. Ah, he said. But Inés was different, Miguel added, her smile sharpening slightly at the edges. She knew exactly what she was doing. She's the devil, I tell you. Later, when the evening had finally loosened its grip and the others had drifted away, Inés found Cárcel and spoke quietly. I'm sorry, Cárcel, my father gave you quite a hard time, didn't he? It's fine, he said. After all, I do have many faults. But why are you apologizing? Because I feel apologetic. Don't mind what he said and just do as you wish. I'm already doing exactly that. I see that, Inés said, her voice carrying just the faintest edge. You even set our wedding date for 2 weeks from now without any notice. Thanks to you, I'll have to wear my mother's hideous 27-year-old dress for my wedding. What you did was selfish, but I understand that you were just doing what you felt you had to. What I want is to marry you, so I have no objections, Cárcel said. I've been waiting for you for a long time, so while this may be sudden, I should accept it with a smile. I know her reasons for wanting this are not pure, he thought privately. Cárcel, you're too good to be tied down by conventions, Inés continued. I rather enjoyed seeing how free you once were. I don't want you to wither away after being bound by rules and responsibilities. After all, a flower dies when it's plucked. Cárcel stared at her. What nonsense are you spouting now? It's one thing to compare a grown man to a flower, but are you honestly trying to brainwash me right now? Brainwash you? Why would you say that? You're talking to me as if you're trying to control my mind, so what exactly are you trying to do? I'm not trying to do anything. I already kissed you, so I think I made myself quite clear. You were just making an effort, she said. Making an effort? You wanted to drive it into my head that you're prepared to do whatever it takes to satisfy your sense of obligation, even if that means kissing a woman like me. Did she really have to use those words? I don't feel obligated, Cárcel said, his voice tightening. Nor was I hoping to drive anything into your head. You told me you liked me, and then you said you didn't. Now, you're suddenly acting this way. You said you didn't want to waste your energy, yet you're busy trying to push me over the cliff's edge as if you can't wait to get rid of me. Did you ever even like me all those years ago? If so, when did you begin hating me? Are you actually angry because I don't like you? Inés shot back, something finally cracking through her composure. I'd say this is a case of the pot calling the kettle black. Was it not you who chose to live a promiscuous life? What exactly is inside that little pea brain of yours? I can't understand you one bit. I imagine your inability to comprehend is a result of you relying solely on that body of yours while neglecting to use your brain, no? Even after all this time, you're still treating me as just some idiot with a handsome face. Of course, you never fail to bring up your good looks. After all, how else would you have made it this far if you weren't pretty, huh? So, am I supposed to just pretend I'm not good-looking? I'm obviously far more handsome than even the most ideal man. And also, I should remind you that I was never a willing participant in this arrangement from the start. She caught herself and exhaled. It's true that you were forced into this engagement, and you're about to be forced into this marriage as well, so you had no obligation to be faithful to me. Listen, Escalante, I understand why you behaved as you did. There's no need to be understanding, Cárcel said, because I'm telling you that things will be different after the wedding. And how exactly will they be different? You've lived like a dog all this time, yet you claim you'll suddenly become a saint once we're married. You expect me to believe that? You will once we reach our bedroom. We'll be sleeping in separate rooms, Escalante. Eventually, we will be sleeping together. I am a human. I don't lie with dogs. Alright, let's say I'm a dog, Cárcel said, his voice dropping into something almost gentle. But dogs are animals that must live among humans, so don't just release me into the wild as you please. After all, a dog will always return to its home. So don't waste your energy on a fight you won't win. I don't know what it is you're trying to do, but this is getting too dangerous, Inés thought. Her hand connected with the side of his head, sharp and decisive. That's right, she said, as though narrating a simple fact. You got slapped. I slapped you. Cárcel blinked, more surprised than hurt. Why do you look so shocked? This can't be your first time being slapped in the face. But it is. And you slapped my head, not my face. But honestly, he thought, the way she hit me just now tells me that this isn't her first rodeo. To think I was your very first time, Inés said, her voice settling into something oddly solemn. It feels a bit burdensome. She's talking like an experienced man. Don't tell me you actually wanted to get slapped, she added, Inés. No one in this world wants to be slapped. You'd be surprised by how many people do. That's why I thought you might be like that too. Also, Cárcel said, steering the conversation back with deliberate patience. Dogs are meant to run outside, and that is precisely how I would raise one. An animal should never be allowed to enter its master's room, let alone their bed. Are you giving me a warning right now? Since you started it, I'm setting a few boundaries myself, Inés replied. And when the time comes, just get to the main part quickly. Don't bother with any of that extra silliness like just now. And what exactly do you consider extra silliness? That thing you just did. You mean a kiss? Then what's the main part? The very basics that are absolutely necessary. You mean it? We'll do things efficiently. We mustn't hold back if we're to appease our families. Cárcel looked at her for a long moment. You're such a pervert. So we can't kiss, but intercourse itself is okay? It's so ridiculous that I can't even laugh. Our wedding is a joke anyway, Inés said plainly. I'm about to attend my wedding mass in that old dress as if I'm following family tradition. And you, a man who is roaming about outside of Mendoza, trying to avoid your fiancé, suddenly insisted on getting married in 2 weeks. So considering our circumstances, I'd say it's fine if you don't find it funny. I never thought any of this was laughable, Cárcel said quietly. Having you as my wife was the only future I ever considered. Inés looked at him. That is why I kissed you. It wasn't because I love you, but rather because you're soon going to be the most important woman in my life. Cárcel went still for just a moment before replying. It was rude of me, so I apologize. Since we're about to be married, I carelessly assumed it would be okay. I won't do anything you don't like. We aren't in love, so if it makes you uncomfortable, I will respect your decision. I won't kiss you again, and I won't do anything else. You asked me not to. So, for now, I will take it that you're okay with everything except for kissing. And just like that, time passed, and the wedding day had finally arrived. The bells of the church rang out across the city, their sound carrying through the cool morning air as the gathered guests settled into their seats. It was a closed wedding, attended only by the imperial family and the 17 noble families, but the quietness of it carried its own particular weight. When Inés appeared, Cárcel went completely still. She raised her hand toward him, her eyes steady and unreadable, and spoke his name. Cárcel. And then, before the eyes of everyone present, they kissed. The wedding mass wrapped up with a solemn and pious atmosphere. Although it was not a large wedding, none of the participating parties had any regrets. That was because no matter what any onlookers said, the scene before them continued to remain quiet and peaceful. At the reception, Cárcel and Inés moved through the first dance together, and every pair of eyes in the room followed them without apology. "Are you finding this song a bit too long?" came a voice beside him. Cárcel turned. "Ihar, this jerk." "You seem nervous," Dante Ihar said pleasantly. "You couldn't take your eyes off of your bride for even a second." Dante Ihar, the eldest son of Duke Ihar, who was famous for being old-fashioned. And yet this particular son made Cárcel look like a priest by comparison. He was a man with mistresses hidden all over the city of Mendoza, and the audacity to wear a perfectly composed expression while saying so. Duke Valeztena had tried his best to assert that there were plenty of other pristine young men who could have replaced Cárcel as Inés' groom. There had been Enrique Osorno, known for his intelligence and scholarly accomplishments, unlike Cárcel, who boasted nothing but muscles. There had also been Leonardo Helves, whom Inés could have ordered around at will since he was several years younger than her. And finally, there had been the man with a decent face and a well-kept personal life. Dante Ihar, he would never deviate from the righteous path. A well-kept personal life, huh? Cárcel thought. This man never deviates from the righteous path. I find it so amusing that he was actually one of the contenders. I don't believe that's any of your business, Cárcel said. There are people even now who are betting you'll find a new woman to bed tonight, Ihar continued, undeterred. If they were to see you right now, I imagine they'd sorely regret it. Given all the money they're about to lose. What a rude thing to say to a groom on his wedding day. I didn't say it to upset you. I'm merely saying I think they made a mistake, and that they'll lose their bets. Just look at Inés. I can understand why you can't take your eyes off of her. I don't care if anyone understands it or not. Surely, I nearly thought you were going to faint during the mass. If it were me, I wouldn't have minded losing a bit of money to see that. No one could believe their eyes. They thought the Valeztena family perhaps had another daughter we all knew nothing about. Cárcel said nothing, but the observation was not wrong. Yes, it was obvious that everyone was shocked. Inés was still receiving a combination of surprised, admiring, and stunned looks from every corner of the room. She smiled kindly at those who gazed in astonishment, and simply ignored those who annoyed her. She behaved naturally, as she had always ruled over the other nobles in high society, but Inés was still Inés. All that had changed was her hair and her clothes. She may have smiled more, which was a rare occurrence, but it was just another expression she wore. Even so, the whole world treated her as though everything about her had changed. It was ridiculous, Cárcel thought. Where could this gem of a woman have come from? Ihar mused. Still, he added after a moment, I doubt she ever be enough for you. Albeit, the novelty of it may be blowing you away right now. I bet you didn't even realize her body looked like that underneath, since she always had herself covered up. Of course, Inés was always beautiful, even when completely covered up, but her body is so what? Cárcel said, his voice dropping half a degree. I didn't mean anything by it, Ihar said quickly. Anyhow, isn't this unexpected luck for you? I've already imagined it before, Cárcel replied. I'm not surprised. At any rate, I won't stand in the way of your fun. I don't have the power to anyway. As if I could ever win against my dear friend's handsome face and incredible physique. If you know that, then make yourself scarce already. And we aren't friends. Well, still, when you get tired of the honeymoon phase, do give me a chance. To console your wife. Across the floor, Inés caught the tail end of the exchange and thought to herself with quiet detachment, he's making such a big deal about this. And Ihar, for his part, held a private observation close to his chest with barely contained triumph. Their lips didn't actually touch. Across the reception hall, the whispers had already begun. My goodness, I can't believe it, even as I'm seeing it with my own two eyes. Two ladies watched as Cárcel and Inés moved through the dance floor together, the room parting quietly around them. Is the woman over there dancing with Lieutenant Escalante? Really the Inés Valeztena we know? Nearby, Cárcel turned back to Ihar with a look that carried its own particular warning. If you find that you're growing tired of living, just let me know. I'll gladly kill you. Women flock to you anyway without you even having to lift a finger, as if they were all just waiting for you to extend an offer. It truly is unfair. You get to do everything you want, so you can't expect Inés to just stay home obediently, Ihar replied pleasantly. Besides, if Inés does find herself a lover, I bet you'll have a much easier time shaking off that guilt you feel toward the woman who's been in love with you since she was 6 years old. If ever you grow tired of the honeymoon phase, please do give us a chance. Before Cárcel could respond, another voice arrived at his shoulder. You seem bored. As expected, Valeztena wine is truly the best. Oscar settled in beside him with the ease of someone entirely unaware of how unwelcome he was. The man refused to give up a single bottle before, even when I begged. But it seems he's finally willing to part ways with it for you of all people, now that you're his son-in-law. I apologize, Your Highness, Cárcel said. Oscar swirled his glass thoughtfully. If she had opted for Enrique Osorno, for example, I would have had a slightly easier time accepting this. But why did Inés choose someone like you? Just look over there. Gosh, they look so good together. You're feeling quite jealous, aren't you? After all, Inés is incredibly gorgeous, as expected. I imagine you must want to chain her to your side at all times, but I doubt that will make for a happy marriage. What would an unwed man know about marriage anyway? There are some things you can just tell, even without having experienced them yourself. It's alright. It looks like Osorno is keeping your wife quite entertained in your stead. Cárcel watched from across the room and said nothing, though his thoughts moved with quiet precision. Crown Prince Oscar was already 27 years old. Even after being rejected by Inés at the tender age of 10, he had secretly continued trying to woo her to no avail. Eventually, he ended up getting engaged to Marquis Barca's niece, who is now 22 and passing her marriageable age. But the prince refused to wed her, citing the ridiculous excuse that she looked too young. Meanwhile, he could barely speak a word to Inés, perhaps because the rejection had simply been that harsh. I've never seen her smile like that when she's with you, Oscar continued. Is it because Enrique is such an excellent conversationalist? Or maybe those two are just better suited for each other? Damn this cousin of mine. She smiled just fine when we partook in our first dance, Cárcel said. Ah, I see. The very first time she smiled for you, she was faking it. Cárcel reached for a glass of wine. What an overreaction, Oscar observed. You may be able to drink from my cup, but the bride's is off limits. You don't have to worry about Dante Har. He'll eventually become bald, just like his father. Of course, you need to be careful too, Oscar said. Uncle doesn't exactly have a full head of hair either, just as Dante and his father share the same forehead. You mean, the same way you have my father's forehead, Cárcel replied, now that you mention it. I'm curious to know if having the same forehead shape means you'll end up having similar hairlines. Later that night, Inés stood in her chambers while her maid fussed nearby. I'm hungry. Can't I eat something before I go? No. What if you have a potbelly on your wedding night? But everyone gets a potbelly when they eat. I saw you eating quite a lot at the banquet earlier too. In fact, I saw the Duchess glaring at you like she wanted to kill you, Signora. Well, she can't kill me even if she wants to. I'm an Escalante now. Also, I'm starving after all that dancing. What sparked this sudden change in you? You've always said that you don't even like conversing with the other nobles. It was my wedding. The maid shook her head with fond exasperation. Every senior in the room was staring with their eyes bulging out of their heads. It looked like they all wanted to court you toward the end. The Duke and the Duchess were pleased at first, but they became more worried later. They were wondering if they should start handing out numbers to the men to keep them in order. So, did it make you happy? Inés asked. It was your work, after all. It wasn't me they were interested in. They were only reacting to your masterful handiwork. Oh, you have always been beautiful, Signora. That is why it's so ridiculous that everyone has suddenly changed their attitude toward you just because you put on some makeup, and you just got married too. Do they know no shame? People are naturally shallow, and young men are even shallower. But how could they try to flirt with you so openly? These are supposed to be the top young gentlemen in Mendoza, and what about the young senoritas? They were suddenly acting so friendly toward you. Inés was quiet for a moment. I was shallow once too, even more so than them. I don't recall you ever being like that. Anyhow, I could have adorned you even more beautifully, the maid pressed on. You didn't even get to wear a single custom dress to your own wedding. It was a wedding after all, Inés said, so keeping the atmosphere light was the best thing to do, however shallow it may have been. But beneath those words, her thoughts moved somewhere quieter and older. I hadn't experienced it since my first life, but even just that small taste was enough to exhaust me. Back when I lived that life, every day was a frustratingly miserable struggle to survive. Even if those days seem laughable now, the anger and despair I felt constantly was no laughing matter. Although those memories have now become faint, there was one night that made it all worth it. But I understand my situation all too well. You accepted all those dance proposals without complaint, the maid said softly. For the sake of the lieutenant's reputation, didn't you? I couldn't let Cárcel be humiliated or looked down upon. Well, it was his first wedding after all, Inés said simply. It was the least I could do for him. The maid paused, a small frown crossing her face. Why is she speaking as if this isn't her first wedding as well? Inés began removing the pins from her hair, her reflection steady in the mirror before her. I will not cause any harm to him throughout this marriage, and I won't avoid any of my duties as his wife either. That's enough, she said aloud. There's no need for me to be dolled up anymore. I won't give him any reason to divorce me. The rest of my plan must go off without a hitch. I'll be going to the bedroom now. She set down the last pin and looked at herself one final time. After all, this is only the beginning. Cárcel stood alone in the room, his thoughts moving through the quiet with unusual weight. The wedding ceremony and celebratory banquet take place solely for the enjoyment of others. The true marriage contract is completed on the wedding night. In the aristocratic world, if nothing happens on the wedding night, the marriage can simply be annulled the very next day as if it had never happened. And still, if the terms set by each party ultimately aren't met, even a fully consummated marriage can be made to disappear. Of course, that didn't happen often. We just have to get through our wedding night smoothly. And Inés needs to still want this marriage. Duke Valeztena had continued threatening to annul the marriage if there were any hitches at all, but he wouldn't be able to do so as long as Inés wanted to stay in it. Inés had tormented me, both in my dreams and in reality. And in that time, it seems my desires were repressed. The time passed by so painfully slowly, and when everyone saw Inés the way I had imagined her to be, I thought I was going to lose my mind. And so I pray this night goes by quickly. After tonight, the nightmare will finally be over, and all will be right with the world. Inés Escalante, Cárcel Escalante's wife. Her name would be added to the Escalante family tree, and he would whisk her away from Duke Valeztena's reach, take her to the new mansion on the coast of Castalla. To a place where they could finally be alone. A place where we can be alone, he murmured to himself. I never thought this day would come, but here we are. Crazy bastard. There's no doubt I have gone mad. The moment I sent the marriage proposal, I decided that we would spend our honeymoon not in Mendoza or Esposa, but in Castalla, where my fleet is docked. I swear that it had no special meaning. And it most certainly wasn't because I was desperately longing to be alone with her. Damn it, it seems I may have fallen for Inés after all. Could it be that I am now the one who is in love? This can't be. Not far away, in the shadows of the reception hall, another man watched the evening unfold with an expression of quiet calculation. So, she's that arrogant Escalante fellow's woman? Emiliano said softly, almost to himself. That must be why she looks especially tempting. What better way to prove your superiority to Cárcel Escalante than seducing his wife? Inés Valeztena's beauty may have exceeded everyone's expectations, but she won't be able to keep Escalante's interest for long. I can't wait for the day when Cárcel Escalante turns his back on his dear wife. There is nothing easier than consoling a woman with a wounded heart. He paused, something flickering briefly across his face. Cárcel? The door to the bedroom opened, and Cárcel turned. Inés stood in the doorway exactly as she was, unhurried and entirely unashamed. You didn't walk all the way here looking like that, did you? He managed. I did. I've always had a bit of an exhibitionist inside me, you see. I'm kidding. Didn't you want to take my robe with her? She stepped inside and looked at him evenly. Are you not going? Going where? To the bed. And without further ceremony, she reached for him. What are you? He started. We have to get undressed anyway, she said simply. I'm just trying to make this easier for you. How about you? Do you need me to undress you? Oh, do you prefer keeping your clothes on? I've heard some people like that. I don't mind putting this back on. His hand caught her wrist before she could move. Putting it back on? Don't even dream of doing such a thing in front of me. Double quotes. What? He lifted her without another word. You're perfect just as you are, Inés. I can walk on my own. I can't be sure how much stamina you have left, so just let me carry you, but it's only a few steps. You shouldn't have used up so much stamina on those men earlier. If you had reserved your energy, I would believe that you still had some left right now. Escalante. And Inés, even as she protested, found herself thinking with reluctant clarity, how is he so quick to react just because I shed some clothes? Someone who's clearly gone mad, he seems awfully lucid. Inés lay still and fixed her gaze somewhere above her, her mind reaching deliberately for calm. A quiet sea. A sun rising over a forest, a fire in front of a cabin, she thought. I shall think only of peaceful things. Ultimately, this marriage was planned by me, and our wedding night is a part of that plan. I am mentally prepared for this. I'm sure he'll fall asleep soon enough. This is nothing at all. Aren't you going to do it? She asked. Cárcel looked down at her. Your face, it looks like you're about to enter battle. I'm not laughing at you, of course. If you aren't laughing at me, then hurry up and do your job. You're talking like a slave driver. I'm only trying to remind you of your duty, Escalante. You're still calling me Escalante even in bed? It's just a habit. You're an Escalante too now, Inés. So if you call me by that name, it'll be hard to tell whether you're doing it with me or with Miguel. Inés blinked. What on earth is he talking about? Then her thoughts shifted sideways entirely. It's perfectly normal since he's a well-built man, but I still didn't expect him to be this big. When it starts to feel good, you should call out my name properly, Cárcel said quietly, so everyone outside can hear you. Not the lips. Right. You did say the lips were off limits. I didn't say that to mean, hang. You could just kiss me everywhere else. You don't like it? Then, do I have to kiss you from head to toe to see which places I'm not allowed to kiss? It's not that I dislike it, she said. It just feels strange. But I haven't even done anything strange yet. You can't do things like this, Cárcel. Things like what? I know you're just trying to make me feel good. Are you saying I shouldn't be making you feel good? Don't you like feeling good? Cárcel, I'm not some pervert. That's why I'm asking you, do you like it or not? Why? So I can remember. I won't do anything you don't like. Cárcel, I appreciate your concern, but I know you never wanted this marriage. Not this again, he said, something firming in his voice. I was the one who sent the marriage proposal. I even made a sudden demand to your father that he hand you over within 2 weeks, and he made sure to curse me every single day leading up to it. In the end, I wanted this marriage as well. Whether the two of us like each other or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is that you wanted this marriage and I wanted it too. That is the reality of our matrimony. And you're still trying your hardest not to accept it, because you have a habit of trying to control me, with the excuse that it was you alone who wanted this marriage. But I wanted all of you, including your bad habits. After all, I rather like bad women. He paused, studying her carefully. I think you're mentally ready for it. May I check? What if I say no? It's true that this is all unnecessary if our only objective is to get you pregnant. I'm fine with that. So, all you want from your husband is for him to remove his clothes and take you like an animal? That's what you're telling me to do right now. You want me to take you against your will, without considering your feelings at all. You're asking me to take what I want from you and leave. I've already agreed to all of that. Just tell me you don't want me because you think I'm filthy. I would find this easier to accept if you just said you wanted to make it quick, because you'd rather not lie with some used rag like me. Your body is so damned pristine that even if that strange mind of yours came up with a crazy idea like that, I wouldn't have anything to say, Inés finished quietly. It isn't like that. I want us to get along. I just want us to live peacefully. That is why I'm saying you can do whatever you want with me. And as the night moved on in silence, Cárcel's thoughts moved somewhere he had not expected to find himself. If I couldn't cover my ears, I at least wanted to cover up her lips, but I had no right to kiss those lips. I had no right to feel angry, or even want to know her hidden past. The girl who had closed herself off lay with the boy who was the one exception in her life. And sometimes the boy pitied the girl and would show interest in her. There was a time when you captivated me, and I felt the satisfaction of believing I might just be your whole world. Right now I can feel that strange satisfaction crumbling underneath my feet. The next morning, Olga's voice filled the room before the light had fully settled. I always knew this day would come, but I can't believe it's finally here. It felt so surreal yesterday that I thought I was dreaming. But now that I see you two sitting together like this, I'm finally starting to believe this is real life. I feel like the huge burden I've been carrying with me has finally lifted. I'd wondered what I'd done wrong to deserve such shame. Really, Inés, this was all I ever wanted for you, dear. I can't believe you've finally become a woman. Truly, I worried you'd be stuck wearing those hideous black rags for the rest of your life and end up having your engagement cancelled. That's enough, Olga, Lionel said. But being that you're the daughter of House Valeztena, you couldn't exactly marry outside of the Grandes de Ortega, Olga. All I'm saying is that if she was going to enter into some frivolous marriage and bring shame to the Valeztena name, I would have preferred to send her to a nunnery to spend the rest of her life there. Don't you agree, Lord Cárcel? I'm not sure what it is you want me to say, Cárcel replied carefully. Oh gosh, are you worried that Inés might be upset by my words? This girl here always ignores her mother, so you don't have to worry. If you plan to continue making these comments in the future, Cárcel said, his voice dropping into something quiet and absolute, I will have to follow your daughter's lead and pretend not to hear you as well. What do you mean, these comments? Certainly you can't mean the things I'm saying out of concern for your wife. True concern stems from love, Cárcel said. If you truly loved your daughter, you would be more afraid of hurting her than having your words ignored. My wife has ears, so she can hear everything you say. Now then, we have a long journey ahead of us to Castilla. Please forgive us for not being able to stay longer. The room went still. Inés sat perfectly upright, her expression composed, and thought one single word with the full force of genuine alarm. Calstala. No ordinary mother would ever think that little of her daughter, Cárcel said, nor would she embarrass that daughter in front of her brand new husband. To be fair, my mother is rather excited about our marriage, Inés replied evenly. If you had let her finish, I'm sure you would have found out that she's just relieved I didn't turn out as she feared. What you witnessed today doesn't happen often. Besides, I'm not the only one she treats this way. My father resides at the manor in Mendoza while my mother stays in Perez, so it's rare for the whole family to be in one place like this. She hardly bothers me, so... I saw your face, Inés. His voice was quiet but certain, and judging by the way you simply turned a deaf ear, I could tell you had experienced that sort of thing countless times before. You shouldn't let your mother talk to you that way, regardless of whether you're a Valeztena or an Escalante. A beat passed before he added, and also, sorry. For what? I didn't mean to push you like that. Inés blinked. Push me? What do you mean? I acted like an animal. I treated you without a single care. I was no better than your mother. It's understandable that you'd be sick of me after what happened last night. You want me to take you against your will. Inés studied him for a moment. Is he still worried about what was said yesterday? She thought, Cárcel didn't force himself on me last night. In fact, it was obvious that he was controlling his urges, rather than simply continuing with force. This showed me that, contrary to Cárcel Escalante's debauched nature, he did his best to fulfill his duty. Of course, he did fulfill that duty rather vigorously. You haven't mistreated me, she said. Last night was our wedding night, and we merely carried out our duties as a married couple. Of course. Given my awkwardness, I'm sure it wasn't enough for you. Although I made sure not to satisfy him completely, she thought privately. I didn't act too timid, or else it might have slowed things down. After all, it will become a problem if I don't get pregnant later. I think I managed to meet him halfway at least. You weren't awkward at all, Cárcel said. In fact, your performance far surpassed my expectations. You were amazing, Inés. I don't recall doing anything particularly amazing. Well, I suppose riding me in the bathtub up until 2 hours ago, after an entire night of lovemaking, isn't considered amazing. You squeezed every last drop out of me before discarding me like a used tissue. Wait, Inés said quickly. This isn't something we should be talking about outside of the bedroom, Cárcel. We simply carried out our duties as a married couple, and now we're talking as any married couple should. What is it that you want to say? Normally, a husband and wife can fulfill their duties within 10 minutes. But for us, not even 10 hours together was enough. We did far more than just our duties, Inés Escalante. Before she could respond, he lifted her into his lap with the ease of someone who had already decided the matter settled. The people around them looked on in barely concealed astonishment. I hate things like this, Inés said. Put me down, I don't want to. Put me down, Cárcel. I see that you've learned the utility of calling me by my first name. Nearby, a maid leaned toward another with barely contained excitement. Rumor has it those two had a passionate night. I'd heard that their love was intense, but it must really be true. And yet, it doesn't seem it's helped me much thus far, Inés murmured under her breath. She glanced out the window and sighed. We haven't even done anything, and yet, 7 hours has already passed, Cárcel. It isn't true that we did nothing. After all, you slept on my lap the entire carriage ride over, remember? I can't believe you had the carriage go slower just because of that. It should have only been a 5-hour ride. But you didn't even get an hour of sleep last night. Even just now, you said you were dizzy as soon as you stepped out of the carriage. That was because I stood up too quickly. What I mean is, it's a common thing for women to experience. Anyway, I didn't expect to be accompanying you to your post. I thought that when you returned to work I'd be going to the manor in Esposa, but I won't be there. We don't have to be together at all times. Well, there are indeed an unusually large number of officers' wives living in Caliatella compared to other posts. After all, this place is as beautiful as any vacation spot. Inés looked out at the coastline as the thought moved through her slowly. Most officers didn't live with their wives. Rather, they would maintain their posts while their wives took care of the official residence located in the capital city. It was common for married couples to spend only brief vacations together, but Calstala was an exception. Even loveless couples chose to live together here, as the city was so attractive. The coast of Calstala featured hills graced by the gentle sea breeze, unlike in Mendoza, where the air was hot and humid. The sound of cool ocean waves could be heard here. If it wasn't for the booming social scene in Mendoza, everyone would choose to live in this beautiful military port instead. The unique rigidness of the enormous naval port, its lofty skies, and the way the beautiful blue ocean melded with the city in such a strangely harmonious way, and the sound of the waves. These things always remind me of a certain someone from my dreams. I can hear the harsh sound of the port's waves, and see the unsteadiness of my vision, and with each laborious breath my hands trembled, anxious that I would soon lose him in us. I'm fine, she said. Let's go inside. But the thought followed her through the door and into the quiet of the new house, the port. We were at that day wasn't Calistella's main port, but rather a tiny fisherman's port located along the lower end of the coastline. The naval port was situated just above the main port, and it wasn't a place civilians were allowed to pass through freely. She looked out toward the water one last time before stepping inside. What were you doing there that day? Why? Did you help Emiliano? Lieutenant Commander Alba looked down at the items before him, shaking his head slowly with something close to disbelief. Is that really all you want in exchange? Yes, Lieutenant Commander Alba Cárcel said. And as you can see, I have prepared the item I mentioned to you earlier. I can't believe it even as I am looking at it right now. To think you'd try bribing your superior with something like this. Alba straightened, visibly moved. Lieutenant Cárcel Escalante, I have no choice but to see you differently, and I must say, I am truly touched by what you did for me. Thank you, Escalante. Not at all, sir. I like to think it was simply God's will. That you just happened to be on vacation here in Mendoza. How will I ever repay you? Yes, certainly. But are you sure my residence in Castella will suffice? I mean, a rifle and baton engraved with Admiral Calderon's name. These are gifts no amount of money could buy. I am well aware of how much respect you have for my grandfather, sir. I am more worried about whether my handwritten letter alone will be enough for your wife. Of course it's enough. When I passed along the news, she was beyond ecstatic. Well then, I am counting on you. My wedding is just around the corner, so we must hurry, and... Alba paused, something occurring to him. By the way, I'm surprised. As you know, my residence is rather small. Plus, you've never had much of an interest in oceanfront houses. I thought you were sick of the sea. I will be a newlywed after all, Cárcel replied simply. Inés stood in the entrance of the residence and surveyed the situation with narrowed eyes. Why do you have so much luggage? Will there even be enough room for me here? Maybe not, Cárcel said. Why wouldn't there be? He thought immediately after. Inés turned to him. I think you mixed up your thoughts with your words. However I look at it, it doesn't seem there's going to be room for my things as well. You do realize this is all your luggage, don't you? I know this is normal since it's rare for soldiers to live with their families at their post, but still. Nearby, 2 of the household staff spoke quietly amongst themselves, apparently under the impression that no one was listening. My wife has become a completely different woman. It's been like this ever since we started living in our residence. It's as if she's a woman I'm meeting for the first time. Could it be because you used to see each other so infrequently? You did get married 10 years ago, after all. Can you not even recognize a metaphor? I'm saying we've been able to see each other in a new light. It's like we're 2 different people now. I wonder if it's all the time we've been spending together since we don't have much staff at the house. She's become so much kinder now that I can hardly even remember why we fought before. The housekeeper, Arendra, swept forward before anyone could dwell on that exchange any further. Your stay here will be perfectly comfortable, Signora. Why don't you start by throwing away anything you don't like? Aside from our lieutenant, of course. I don't want to throw away someone else's things, Inés said. A husband's things are his wife's things as well. So feel free to throw away anything you want. And this is where the pool table the lieutenant liked to use is located. There's also a card table and a chess table too. It was rare for him to ever bring a colleague here. He mostly just used this room to contemplate on his own. Inés turned to look at Cárcel. So, you played here all by yourself, huh? Don't make me sound like such a social misfit. Come over here, Inés. This here is our bedroom. Inés stepped inside and took in the room quietly. Arendra leaned in with conspiratorial energy. Signora, would you come this way for a moment? This is the lieutenant's library. Personally, I've never seen the lieutenant reading anything, so perhaps this could become your own private library, Signora. Well, I'm sure he reads from time to time, Inés offered. Arendra dropped her voice to a whisper. In all my years, I've never seen that man crack open a single book. I think she's saying these things because she's worried Inés might run away, Cárcel thought. Not to mention, Arendra continued brightly, he always finishes his work back at headquarters. He says he doesn't like to bring his work home. From the library, you can see both the ocean and the naval residences on the hill. What do you think, Signora? Do you like it? Of course, Iñárritu said softly. I love it. She was quiet for a moment, then added, How can you already? Be ending your vacation tomorrow? Are you disappointed? Cárcel asked. I'm just shocked by your lack of planning. I planned things just fine. Are you referring to the plan you made where you had just 2 weeks of vacation even after using up all your allotted time? Well, the wedding went fine, and you're here now, aren't you? I don't see a problem. Inés looked out at the view and exhaled slowly. At any rate, I'm relieved. This place is quite different from what I expected. What did you expect? I thought it would be more like a port. Perhaps busier or louder, and filled with fishing boats. That's because this is a military base where fishing is banned. But if you go down just a bit along the coast, there's a famous port. In Mendoza, people just call it the Calstala port, but the locals call it Port Del Tabio. That's the main port. Inés stilled almost imperceptibly. Then, is this place La Tabio too? That's one of the smaller ports. I think the name was it Sevilla? He glanced over at her expression and followed her gaze to the painting on the wall. Why? Do you like the painting? Should I put it in your library? No, Inés said, her voice dropping to something flat and quiet. I don't like it at all. Please throw it away. I don't want to have to see it ever again. Inés lay still in the early morning light, the sound of the ocean drifting in through the curtains, and let her thoughts move quietly through the space between sleep and waking. How suffocating. How did I end up here? I remember sitting by the window, but the mood kept becoming lewd, and even after I opened up the Bible, I ultimately got swept away and blacked out right there in my seat. No wonder he was a famous womanizer. We're merely doing our duty, but he's probably just enthusiastic because it's our honeymoon? I don't know how long he'll be able to ignore his need to find a new woman to bed. But even true love cools down eventually, so I doubt a lust born from duty will ever last. This is only temporary. The distinctly chilly morning air carried with it the sound of gentle waves crashing against the cliff, and the curtains moved softly in the breeze. I'm sure all of these things can be heard in Sevilla too. The thought arrived quietly, the way old wounds sometimes do, without warning and without mercy. When I woke up again in my 6-year-old body, Sevilla was the place that controlled me like a nightmare. It was the place that made me spend years resenting Luciano, who had once again become just a young man. It kept me trapped inside those memories, of meeting Emiliano for the first time at the age of 16, until age 20 when he died. It reminded me of the night Emiliano's body turned cold, and my baby was stolen from me. I used to wake up every morning knowing that the night of Emiliano's death would be coming. She breathed slowly, steadily, but now, to think, I only just learned of its name yesterday. I no longer look out at the ocean and dream of Sevilla, or of Emiliano. Now, I merely lie in the arms of another man, and think about these things. Because I know that in this life, none of these things have occurred. She turned toward the figure still asleep beside her Cárcel. Wake up, it's morning. At the naval base, the morning unfolded with considerably more chaos. The moment Cárcel walked through the door, the room went still, and then erupted. The lieutenant is smiling? Inés Escalante, Cárcel thought. He's smiling. Who put money on the lieutenant walking in with a smile? No one? 5 people bet on him having no expression. 2 on him looking like he had no thoughts in his head at all. 1 person said he'd be smiling like a pervert, and 1 other said he'd have a barely there smile. Isn't a barely there smile just 1 step away from a full-fledged smile? That means I won, doesn't it? Good grief, someone even bet on him crying. They wrote that he'd walk in sobbing. What? I had my reasons. Marriage is essentially a nail in the coffin anyway. He's basically returning from the grave. But Lieutenant Escalante just walked in here with a smile. He must be choosing to smile so he doesn't cry. I'm pretty sure he was genuinely smiling. Yeah, seems like it. Wait, he isn't smiling anymore. You're right, he looks annoyed. Are you sure he was smiling like a pervert? To me, it looked more like he was smiling without thinking. No, it was definitely a perverted smile. What on earth do you make of the lieutenant? It obviously has something to do with whatever he did last night. Indeed, you're right, Cárcel said flatly, having apparently heard everything. And also, I haven't been to my grave just yet. Goodness, Escalante. What do you mean? Voices murmured around him with poorly concealed enthusiasm. From what I hear, Senora Escalante isn't that sort of woman. I heard she's especially chaste. From what I hear, Senora Escalante isn't that sort of woman. I heard she's especially chaste. Ah, that is true. The lieutenant could even turn a nun. Cárcel's fist connected with the nearest offender before the sentence had fully finished. So, how does it feel, Lieutenant? To be married, I mean. Good. Are you just saying that so we'll change the subject? When coming from Cárcel Escalante, doesn't good usually mean he's absolutely crazy about it? Would you all stop showing so much interest in my personal business? Cárcel said. Acevedo stepped forward with the particular expression of a man who had been waiting patiently for his moment. You know, We may not have been important enough to attend the wedding ceremony, but we did attend the banquet at the Valeztena residence. So, you all saw the Signora then? We certainly did. And we realized that all those rumors were completely false. All that nonsense about her being a crow, or the witch of House Valeztena, or that her only claim to fame is her name. The rumors were truly ridiculous because the Signora was much too beautiful, Escalante. I didn't bet on you smiling like a pervert for no reason. Really, I have my ways, and I saw it with my own 2 eyes. So, you're saying Lieutenant Escalante smiled like that because he's a pervert, right? Of course not. I'm saying he had a wild first night with his new wife. So, is it true about Signora Escalante being that pretty? Did anyone actually say that she was ugly? Or perhaps that she was unpleasant? I did hear that she had an unlikable personality, so is that part true? No, not at all. She was so normal and pretty that I felt like a fool. Then who spread all those rumors? Commander Barca did say in passing that maybe Escalante spread the rumors to keep his fiancée hidden. Seriously? I'm just saying, she's certainly that beautiful. Why do all military bases, Cárcel said, his voice cutting across the room with deliberate finality, smell so awful? A brief pause, then, Lieutenant Commander Vardam was asking, when he'll be getting a tour of your new residence. Get lost. Yes, Lieutenant. But even as the room moved on around him, something quietly and thoroughly unpleasant had settled in Cárcel's chest. Pretty Inés, beautiful Inés. They talk about her with such excitement, he thought. I can't help that petty feeling creeping up my throat. I dislike them all. Each and every single one of them. Inés stood in the doorway of the sitting room, watching Arandrea with the particular expression of someone who had not quite anticipated being the subject of concern. I know this isn't my place, but the staff here are worried about you, Signora, Arandrea said, her voice carrying the careful warmth of someone choosing their words with deliberate care. Is it okay for you to be staying inside like this all day long? Huh? Surely you can't already be pregnant. Yet, you've been eating and napping your days away. I hate to see you like this. Inés blinked. What is there to pity about someone spending the day eating and napping? Well, you've traveled here from a faraway land, and you don't know anyone else in this place, so we worried that you might feel depressed. It's true that I have been lazing around lately, but the groom asked me when he'd be able to show you around the town. Please tell him there is no need. Will you be inviting any other ladies over? The chef wanted to know. Yolanda is already so busy cooking for us. Do I really look that purposeless? Inés thought. Not to mention, Cárcel has been needlessly diligent every morning, so he makes me look lazy by comparison. I understand, Arandrea continued sympathetically. This place provides no entertainment compared to Mendoza. There's hardly anything to see besides the vast ocean, and there's nowhere to even spend money. Arandrea, I don't need any of those things. Even before I was. She stopped herself. I've led such a quiet life this time around that I must have forgotten. Living quietly is the greatest way to rebel in high society. I was always so busy in my first life, and the opinions of my staff mattered so little that I never gave them a second thought. And in my second life, I was so poor that I couldn't even afford staff. But this life is different. What I need is their testimony. After all, I have to prepare for the beautiful dissolution of this marriage. The sound of arrival pulled her from her thoughts. Raoul appeared at the entrance, surveying the modest residence with an expression of quiet devastation. I hadn't heard that your residence would be this small. I should have mentioned it to you in advance. Your luggage is scheduled to arrive in 5 trips. For now, I've brought the things you value most, Miss Inés. So I'll just get these inside. Raoul, there is no room inside. Pardon? No, that can't be. I'm serious. This place is barely housing Cárcel's things as is. Raoul looked as though he might require a moment to recover. Kill me. Are you going to continue living in Castella? Inés looked at him and felt something quiet and fond move through her despite everything. Raoul originally, he was my loyal servant whom I brought with me to the palace to use like a slave. But now he is merely someone in my greatly reduced social circle. In my first life, he was an orphan on the street whom I saved on a whim, and I had him work for me until my dying day. But in this life, I saved him as a calculated move, believing that he might come in handy someday. But as it turned out, he wasn't very useful at all. As a result, I brushed him aside, but with his decent face and considerable height, he managed to become a footman at a young age. Raoul, who was able to serve the nobles directly, learned their secrets and delivered them to me. He nagged other staff members to make sure I had everything I needed, and between the ages of 16 and 20, When I was quietly wasting away from the memory of Emiliano and my baby, he and Juana did everything in their power to keep me fed and alive. How can you live in a place like this? He said. It's nice here. I'm sure there are some who dream of living in a place just like this. You mean like me? Most certainly not you, Miss Inés. I'm doing well here. I don't believe you. Can't you see how much weight I've put on just from eating and sleeping well? What does any of that matter when you're already so beautiful? Besides, how will a woman who insists on wearing a different dress every day be satisfied with this? Dresses all look the same to other people anyway. Their colors may be similar, but you said yourself that they all have different designs. When will you head to the Esposa Castle? I have no plans to do that yet. You promised to take me with you when you got married. I can't have any more staff here. Besides, I should be thankful that a place meant to serve as a temporary home for officers during their post is even this well kept. Why don't you just let the lieutenant play the role of poor officer on his own and return to the castle by yourself? Why, so I can bring you there with me? Yes, Raoul said simply. In my first life, I used him like a slave, and I can't even remember what became of him in my second life. Now, in this third life, I've left him to be his own man, and yet, you never change, Raoul, she said. He still acts like a loyal dog waiting for his name to be called. That's funny. You said before that I was getting worse and worse by the day. Anyway, could you have a look at the luggage and select a few things you want to keep? Okay, let's do that. I see we have a guest, Cárcel's voice carried from the doorway. He glanced around, then at Inés. I didn't expect you to return so early. I didn't even prepare anything. It's not like you're the one preparing our meals, Inés. But I've been pretending to do something at least. I skipped training today. Errand dry's one thing, but I can't ignore the butler's eyes, Inés thought. So, you won't be training every day? I can't be a lazy wife. I'm lazy by nature, so I can't quite afford to go that far, Cárcel said. Inés watched him from across the room, a quieter thought moving beneath the surface. There was a time when I was sick of hearing Cárcel's name, after constantly listening to women singing his praises based on his looks. Women used to say that it wasn't his beautiful God-given face that was his greatest asset. Rather, they believed it was actually the chest and back that he had worked so hard to create. I remember those times when lying around leisurely in a salon was my one great pleasure. But those days are gone, and now it's only the protagonists of that story who are left. There is no one around to gossip about us. It is just us here in Calstala. He's changing on his own. Did he lead this same unaristocratic life in Mendoza too? Do you need help? She asked. Are you offering? A pause. If you need me to. If you touch me now. It won't end with me just taking off my pants. You're free to leave. Inés did not leave. You're still here, Cárcel observed. Could it be that you're trying to make up for not having dinner ready? Am I that transparent? Not at all. That's why guessing is so much easier. I know at least that much after 17 years. I'm offering since I didn't prepare a meal for you ahead of time. It's such an easy task to do, that I didn't want to mess it up. So, you're making it up to me by watching me change like a pervert? How does that make me a pervert? I'm only helping you change your clothes. Next time, don't. You'll just be getting in my way. How am I getting in your way when I'm not doing anything? I almost lost control over my urges. No thanks to those eyes you're making. Inés turned immediately and moved toward the door. I never said I would pounce on you, so why are you running off so fast? Get away. His hands found her before she made it 2 steps. I said I almost lost control, not that I actually did. Besides, you were plenty interested. You even slinked your way in here. I skipped lunch. I'll think about doing it after I eat something first. Stop acting like I begged you to. A maid rounded the corner, took one look at the two of them, and froze. Inés, caught entirely off guard, smiled. What was that smile just now? Cárcel said quietly. You need to act accordingly and with dignity inside your home, Cárcel. Talking about losing control over your urges in the hallway. Do you not realize how often the staff passes by here? You're embarrassing yourself. If you keep talking about it, I really am going to lose it. You're married now, Escalante. It's time to grow up. You're an Escalante too, Inés. When you talk like that, it's impossible to tell who you're referring to. Only a crazy person would address themselves in the third person, of course, and you're too smart to do that. He pulled her closer, something shifting in his expression, quieter, more careful. You seem different today.